I am glad their sacrifice was not in vain, but the price was too high, lamented Robb bitterly, as he clenched his fist in grief and anger. The king became somber upon remembering how Owen Norrie had been the second man to volunteer for this suicide mission right after the Smallgen bravely. Of how Lucas Blackwood had promised to rescue Sansa even at the cost of his life. Of how Theon had sworn himself to him, stood by his side loyally even when all those around them doubted or ridiculed him for his Greyjoy blood, how he had given Robb good counsel with the Vale fleet, how his best friend had never hesitated when he asked him to save Sansa and died fulfilling that order. May the gods bless their souls, for they were truly loyal men who fulfilled their promise even at the cost of their lives. They will be remembered and honored, promised Robb sadly. We have news of the city as well, Your Grace, informed Ed Muir, making Robb look back at him. Last reports say while Stannis captured the walls, the Lannister Tyrell army arrived in full force a little later. Currently, we assume Stannis is busy trying to defend the walls while also trying to storm the Red Keep to destroy the royal family, informed Ed Muir. That will tie up the Lannisters and the Reachmen in the capital a while longer if Stannis's military prowess is to be considered. Tywin will throw every man he has at King's Landing to save his family in the Red Keep, which will increase his losses. I doubt Stannis will survive the onslaught for long, but it does give us an opportunity to raid the Westerlands and the Reach with impunity as per my plan, said Robb, earning nods from his two uncles. Lord Ed Muir, order Smallgen to prepare a large escort to take Sansa back to Winterfell so she can reunite with our family and be safe there. Then the Umber heir is to rejoin our campaign with all haste. I will at least save one of my sisters from further danger, decided the king. The Tully Lord nodded with determination before Bryden raised another question that troubled all three men greatly. What of Arya? Asked the Blackfish sadly, and the deathly silence from Robb made the two Tullys more worried until their king finally spoke after several long moments. Bring Jon here as fast as possible at all costs. Lord Royce is to take over his command in the Westerlands with additional reinforcements. Arya wants to see him. Westerlands. Jon found himself back in the familiar courtyard of Winterfell. He knew it to be a dream when he saw it was entirely deserted and made his heart quicken as a pack of crows flew above its walls as a wolf's painful howl echoed throughout the castle. The beast cried again and again, making him quickly walk towards the direction of the voice to find out what was hurting it. It took him towards the crypts of Winterfell as a foreboding feeling started to envelop his heart as the wolf's cries were coming from underneath it. His eyes widened in absolute shock when he saw Robb and Bran walking towards the crypts from other directions of the castle. He wanted to call out to his brothers, but no words could escape his throat, and he saw they were experiencing the same unnerving situation. Unable to do anything but stare at each other, Jon felt the foreboding feeling in his heart grow stronger when he saw a knowing sadness ever present in Robb's eyes, which frightened Bran as well. The wolf howled once again, and they were even more shocked when little Rickon and Sansa emerged from one of the doors to walk towards them. They were experiencing the same dream even as all the brothers gazed at Sansa in shock, for it was the first time they had seen her ever since she left for King's Landing with their deceased father. They could see in it in her eyes that she was no longer the innocent girl who had left Winterfell, even as she flinched in fear when the wolf howled once again. Robb took the lead and marched solemnly down into the crypt with a haunted gaze, making the rest of his siblings follow after him in eerie silence. They marched down the tombs of their ancient Stark ancestors one after another until they reached the last corridor by following the wolf's cries as it became more painful and tore at each of their hearts. Jon's eyes widened in shock when he saw Arya standing near a tomb with a statue resembling Lord Eddard Stark. Beside her was Nymeria, her direwolf, who looked at him with the closest expression to grief. Arya was looking at their father's statue with a knowing expression which made Robb finally fall to his knees in despair. Bran and Rickon along with Sansa teared up when Arya turned towards them and gave them a sad smile. Jon rushed towards his dearest sister when he saw she started to vanish before their eyes, making Bran, Rickon and Sansa follow urgently. Only Robb remained on his knees in despair. Jon barely managed to wrap his arms around Arya alongside the rest of his younger siblings, but she vanished before they could say anything, and her last words, spoken in a fleeting whisper, haunted his heart. "I'm sorry." Robb awoke with a shocked gasp escaping his throat even as Greywind in his tent howled sadly. Tears were freely falling from his eyes over the dream, and when few minutes later, he saw a crestfallen Ed Muir Tully and Sir Bryden enter his tent, he knew it was not one as he clenched his fist, bitterly drawing blood. "Your Grace," said Ed Muir in a crestfallen voice, and saw a knowing gaze present in Robb's tearful eyes. "My sister is dead." Chapter 14. Blood. Maya Stone had heard stories of how King Rob had wept upon learning of the execution of his father and was only consoled by his lady mother. Maya herself had lost her father when King Robert died, but she hardly had any memories of her father compared to Rob, who had grown under the love and guidance of Eddard Stark. For a moment, she wondered if it was better to experience that priceless love only for it to be robbed off in such a horrible manner, or to not know it all like she had. Many of the Northmen, who were one of the hardest men Maya had ever seen in her life, had cried and were greatly angered upon hearing of Princess Arya's death. A few couldn't help but compare her fate to that of the willful Lyanna Stark, who had died in the south, far away from her home. Their only solace was the fact that their other princess Sansa Stark was rescued, albeit at heavy cost, with the lives of Theon Greyjoy, Lucas Blackwood, Owen Norrie and more than 80 good men from the north and the Vale. She watched King Rob solemnly sitting by his sister's corpse and gently stroking her hair as Grey Wind nuzzled her side mournfully. The young monarch's tears had long since dried up, but the heartbreak and guilt still burned painfully in his eyes. Thankfully, Lord Edmure and Sir Bryden were personally keeping anyone from interrupting their king in his grief after they had paid their own respects and grieved over their kin's death. Even Talisa had been asked to leave the king alone. Maya had been about to follow, but something within Rob's heartbroken gaze made her pause. Sir Bryden had insisted her to move out of the tent, but for some reason Rob had asked for her to stay, silencing the older knight, and gave some much-needed relief to Maya, knowing that she wouldn't have to argue with a respected knight like Sir Bryden Tully. "She was a lot like you, Maya." It was the first thing the king said to her, and it explained why she was allowed to stay when Talisa wasn't, or it could be the unsaid anger she had seen in Rob's eyes over the healer's failure in saving his sister, which saw her being removed from his presence. She walked towards her king and sat by his side to look at the fallen princess with equal sadness in her eyes. "I would have loved to get to know her, your grace," she whispered sincerely. "Call me Rob. I do not wish to be a king in this moment. I would gladly give up my crown if it meant my sister could be alive again," requested Rob sadly, earning a compassionate nod from the eldest base-born daughter of Robert Baratheon. "Rob, I did not know your sister well, but she would never wish that. I was there when she passed. She was happy upon learning you were a king now, and with her final breath she demanded you make the Lannisters pay for what they did to your father and family," confessed Maya hesitantly, making Rob look at her in shock. "That was her final wish?" asked the king. "Yes, and for you and Jon Snow to find Nymeria, her direwolf lost in the Riverlands upon her way to King's Landing. She was pretty adamant upon you finding her wolf no matter the cost, and make the Lannisters pay for their crimes." Rob was silent upon hearing his sister's final wish before a new determination arrived in his eyes as he called for Sir Bryden. The older knight entered, and while not pleased in the way Maya was sitting near Rob, he chose to hold his silence, waiting for his king's command. "You know these lands better than anyone, Sir Bryden. Assemble your best scouts to find Arya's direwolf Nymeria. My sister's last wish was her to be found and brought back to our family and make the Lannisters pay for their crimes." "I will honor that," commanded Rob fiercely. "It will be difficult, but a direwolf is not easy to miss. Getting her here would be a challenge if the wolf doesn't want to," spoke Bryden honestly. "Get it done." Bryden knew a command when he heard one, and looking at his grandness's body made him steel his resolve in fulfilling her last wish no matter the cost. "My scouts have reported Jon is already on his way here and should be in our camp by soon." Apparently, he was back at the Golden Tooth after his victory against Stafford Lannister's army. When he heard Arya was found, he immediately gave his command to Lord Umber before abandoning his force to rush back here, said Bryden with mixed feelings, making Rob give a sad nod. "I am not surprised. He broke rank, and in any other situation I would discipline him for such a reckless decision, but not in this one. He loved Arya, probably more than anyone else. Lord Umber is an able commander, and their strike force is secure for now, and with the 10,000 reinforcements under Lord Royce that we sent a few hours ago, our men in the Westerlands won't be under any major threat for now. But it also means Jon is not aware of what has happened," said Rob sadly. "I had sent riders to bring him back. They had left before Arya passed. At best, he would know she was critical but still alive. He will not take this news well if what you said about his bond with Arya is true," said Bryden worriedly. "Send another party and bring him to Riverrun. Have the Silent Sisters prepared Arya for the journey. I will have Jon meet her there before sending her for honorable burial in Winterfell alongside our ancestors. He will thirst for vengeance more than anything." "And how will you provide that to him?" asked Bryden carefully, making Rob's gaze harden fiercely. he will witness Jaime Lannister's execution. Maya and Sir Bryden froze in shock upon that declaration and looked at their king in stunned silence, who didn't waver for a moment. Sansa is back in our hands. There will be no negotiation with the Lannisters now. The Lannisters murdered our father and sister, blood must pay for blood. I cannot give Jon our sister back, but I can offer him the head of Tywin's dearest son. My bannermen, especially the Northmen, will not be silent if I do not deliver justice swiftly over the manner of Arya's death at the Lannisters' hands. Let Tywin learn loss for once. Hopefully it will make him commit additional mistakes in his pursuit of revenge against us, said Robb without a flinch. Robb. This war will be fought to the bitter end, uncle. Once I take Jaime's head, we will send out a declaration across all the 7 kingdoms detailing their crimes and how House Lannister will be destroyed root and stem, with Jaime's head being the first price. Let their bannermen and Reach allies under the Tyrells learn they shall face the same fate should they not abandon Tywin at the earliest. That is my command. Bryden sighed but nodded, knowing this was necessary, for there was no going back after what had happened to Arya. You and Lord Edmure will take up command of 20,000 men to defend the Riverlands as per the plan we have agreed. While Lord Royce has already started to march into the Westerlands with 10,000 men, I will march with Jon from Riverrun with the last 20,000 reinforcements for the Westerlands and Reach campaign. Also send out ravens to Winterfell informing our family of what has happened. I pray to the gods to give mother strength in this unbearable loss, said Robb sadly, earning a compassionate nuzzle from Greywind, making him ruffle his direwolf's fur, gently expressing his gratitude. Bryden nodded and left to carry out the orders, leaving Robb and Maya alone with Arya as the king's grief returned once again with his duties taken care of. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives, whispered Robb solemnly, as he stroked Arya's pale face. Robb. My father always said that to all of us. Asked us to stick together and look after each other. I failed him, confessed Robb in shame. This isn't your fault, she consoled him, only for him to shake his head as tears fell again from his eyes. When I called my banners and marched to war, all I wanted was to save my father and 2 sisters. Now 2 of those people are dead, so are some of closest friends including Theon. I have never lost a battle, and yet the reason for which I marched and fought this war is lost. Vengeance is all that remains to me, said Robb bitterly. And you shall have it and more, Robb. We are with you till the bitter end, promised Maya fiercely. Robb watched in surprise as Maya gently grabbed his hand comfortingly, and he saw only unwavering faith in her eyes for him. A faint but relieved look arrived in his eyes, and for the first time he saw she had the same deep blue eyes like him. There was a strange beauty to her. The coal-black hair which she had kept short when he first met her were now grown longer and reached past her shoulders a little. Her skin was pale, and while she was a little thin, she had a good build even if she was older than him by a year or 2, he guessed. Suddenly, he forced any further thoughts from clouding his heart as he saw Arya's body from the corner of his eyes and remembered how she had been promised to marry a Free, as was his own hand. He could only imagine how Lord Walder would react upon learning the death of his kin as well as the Stark bride that was promised to his house. It gave him a headache, and he wished to visit a godswood like the one he had in Winterfell to silence his raging thoughts. Then he remembered there was one in Harrenhal, and while not as glorious like the one in Winterfell, it would serve his purpose. Thank you, Maya. I am grateful for your support, and I hope you can consider me a friend. I have enough men and women calling me your grace all day, spoke Robb gratefully, earning a surprised look but followed by a grateful nod from the older girl in front of him. It would be my honor. I can't pledge you my sword, but I am there for you should you ever need my help, how little it may be, replied Maya with a faint smile, as Robb gently patted her hand. Please have Arya's body be prepared by the Silent Sisters to take to Riverrun. I shall be in the Godswood to pray to the old gods for her soul and to give me strength to deliver her vengeance, she asked with her final breath, decided Robb solemnly. I will. Robb nodded at her before getting up and walked away with Greywind at his side. It was only then Maya breathed a sigh of relief, as she couldn't believe what had just happened or how the king's giant direwolf had not been hostile to her despite her being so close to him. For a moment, she wondered had she seen desire in the king's eyes for her, but dismissed those thoughts immediately, for it was not honorable to think of such things when the king was grieving for his dead sister. She was raised better than that by Lord Royce. Robb had been kind to her despite her bastard status, had listened to her counsel on occasion and even gone so far as to make her his friend. She would not dishonor that kindness by taking advantage of him or thinking any less of him in his weakest moment. With that determined thought, she went to work in carrying out his orders like a loyal friend and follower would do for their king. Robb knelt before the haunting weirwood tree in Harrenhal. The face carved upon it would have scared many southerners who followed the Seven like his mother, but he was of the north and didn't fear it. He had visited a similar godswood in Riverrun to pray for his father when he learnt about his execution. He hoped this would be the last time he would visit such a holy place to pray for another deceased family member. His guards were ordered to not disturb him under any circumstances, for he wanted the solace the old gods could only provide him and give him the strength to fulfill Arya's dying wish and avenge the crimes inflicted upon his family and allies. He remembered father had told him once how the old kings of winter, his Stark ancestors, used to offer a little of their own blood before praying before the old gods, as was the ancient custom. But Eddard had told him the Starks had stopped this ritual after Torrhen Stark, the last king of the north, surrendered his crown to the Targaryens. His father believed it was possibly due to shame the Starks felt for no longer being able to carry the respected legacy of their ancestors and feeling themselves unworthy in front of the old gods for surrendering their last lands to the Andals. It made him realize that he was the first Stark king after nearly 3 centuries, a devout follower of the old gods who had regained the crown lost by the Starks and had marched to establish dominion over lands far beyond any Stark had ever done in known history. Wishing to restore his family's legacy, he slightly cut open his left hand and offered a portion of his blood to the face carved upon the weirwood tree before respectfully touching it and closed his eyes. He prayed for forgiveness over his own failures to begin with, followed by asking for the souls of his father and sister to be given peace in the halls of the old gods. He wished the old gods to grant him strength to be a brave, just and honorable king like his father would expect him to be in life now that his path was set. He also apologized for any neglect by his house and ancestors towards the old gods and for failing to protect their legacy when the Andals destroyed it nearly everywhere except the north, and swore to restore it the best he could. King of Winter. Robb's eyes opened in shock upon hearing that, and he found himself in a pitch-dark plain with only the moon shining in the sky giving the light upon this strange place. King of Winter. The voice called out to him again, stronger this time, making him reach for his sword only to curse when it was not there. It earned a faint chuckle from behind him, making Robb turn around urgently. He found himself facing an older man who had features that greatly resembled his own deceased father. There was a crown atop his head, and Robb's eyes widened in shock upon seeing it was similar to the ones he had heard in stories from Old Nan as a child. A crown last worn by only one man. "Are you Torrhen Stark?" asked Robb hesitantly, unsure if his mad assumption based on a lost crown's history could be true. Surprisingly, he earned a somber nod from his ancestor, who was the last Stark king, forever cursed to be known as the king who knelt by everyone for his surrender to Aegon Targaryen. "You are a sharp one." "That is good and will serve you well as King of Winter," said Torrhen calmly. "You called me that before." "I don't understand, much less why we both are here in this strange place," replied Robb seriously, earning another nod from the last Stark king. "It is because you are the first Stark king after me, and because you swore on oath to the old gods to restore their legacy as best you can." "Oaths are important, Robb Stark. The old gods have acknowledged yours and through me wish to give you some advice," answered Torrhen, and Robb couldn't detect any trace of lies, so he gave a respectful nod. "It pains me to see my family reduced to such state as it does the old gods, for it was the Starks who always swore to protect their legacy. The fact that you, a King of Winter, do not hold our ancestral sword ice in your hands is a reflection of how far we have fallen, much of it due to my decisions," confessed Torrhen. "I will get it back. Our enemies stole it from us, but I will ensure we gain it again," promised Robb, earning a faint smile from his ancestor. "You are a good and honorable son, I can see that, and so do the old gods. You have suffered painful losses and may do so more in the future, but it will make you stronger. The fact that you and your siblings have direwolves by your side again bodes well for our house. They are loyal partners who are more intelligent than you may believe. Us Starks were wargs once and could bond with our wolves in the past. You and your siblings may also have that gift if you are able to master it," revealed Torrhen. Robb's eyes widened, as for long he had considered those tales to be nothing more than myths told by Old Nan. It had made him dismiss a few dreams where he had felt being grey-wined hunting in the forest, had he walked into his wolf without knowing. Could his siblings do the same? "Nymeria. Is that what Arya meant?" asked Robb in shock, and felt a deep chill pass across his body. "You understand, child. Arya Stark has died, but her fiery spirit has not. It lives on in her direwolf. Find the wolf for your sister warged into her before her mortal body died. She will never be human again, but nonetheless has an important role to play in the wars to come, answered Torrhen truthfully. The wars to come? Questioned Robb worriedly. Wasn't he already fighting a war? Aegon the Conqueror didn't unleash his war just to rule over the Seven Kingdoms. When I surrendered my crown to him, we developed a strange kinship where he confessed to me in private that he foresaw in his dreams that only a united Westeros could one day face the true threat beyond the wall once it emerged again to darken our world. One your brother has warned you about already, warned Torrhen. The others? You cannot be serious, King, denied Robb, and saw a little relief on Torrhen's face for addressing the older Stark by his title at least. It is true, King Robb Stark. You will realize it sooner or later, though I wish you understand this warning before it is too late for all of our Westeros. I never told my sons of what Aegon confessed, for they hated him for stealing the crown of winter that was theirs. The old gods foresee a long and hard path ahead of you and your siblings, one full of triumph and loss at the same time. You will go to lands you have only heard about in stories, meet people you had never imagined as friends and foes, face challenges no Stark has ever met before, but no matter what, you must unite these broken lands. Most importantly, never forget your oaths, small or large, to your people, lands and gods, for if you do, the consequences shall be dire for everyone. It is a hard life, and in some ways, like me, you will have impossible choices to make, having to do what not you want, but what you must. Remember that, Robb Stark, King of Winter. Before Robb could ask any further, he felt himself falling into darkness and gave out a silent cry. When his eyes opened once again, he found himself back into the Godswood of Harrenhal, where he witnessed a faint green light diminishing from the eyes of the haunting face carved upon the weirwood. Hearing a soft whine beside him, he saw Grey Wind looking at him intently as if judging his very soul. He wondered if he had just dreamed what he had in his grief, but somewhere deep in his heart, a feeling told him it was not untrue. He could not talk about it to anyone, not even his own northern bannermen who followed the old gods, lest he be considered mad. But he needed to make sense of this, and knew he could perhaps only trust Jon with this secret and not be judged a raving lunatic outright. And if what was said about Arya turned out to be true, he couldn't help but hope, but decided to keep his silence for now as he rubbed Grey Wind's head. I will set things right as best as I can, Grey Wind. 3 days later. Jon madly rushed through the gates of Riverrun, having nearly ridden his horse to near death to reach here and even leave the scouts far behind in his haste who had been sent to escort him here on his brother's command. He found Robb waiting for him in the castle's courtyard, surrounded by many lords from the north, Riverlands and the Vale. A silent ghost followed after him and greeted a very subdued Grey Wind, which alone made Jon's heart quicken, for Grey Wind had never been this subdued ever before. As was Robb, even as Jon hastily dismounted from his horse and marched towards his brother who had a crown atop his head. Most lords were expecting him to kneel before his king, but were surprised when Robb marched forward and simply enveloped him in a fierce embrace, uncaring of all protocol that was usually followed. "It's good to have you back," Snow whispered Robb in relief. "I am glad to be back," Stark answered Jon with a restrained smile, referring to their childhood nicknames they used to tease each other with often. Jon didn't fail to notice how many Vale lords were not comfortable with him not showing the king they crowned the desired respect. If only the fools knew what he had just learned from his father, or the bond Robb and him shared. With a sigh, he broke the hug with his brother and knelt before Robb and unleashed a great sword from his back, making many men draw steel. Robb's eyes widened upon seeing Jon offering him House Stark's ancestral sword ice. "I return to your service, your grace. I bring with you our house's ancestral sword, the seat of Golden Tooth and the destruction of Stafford Lannister's army. The way into the Westerlands lay upon for your armies," spoke Jon respectfully, making Robb gingerly grasp ice with a shocked look in his eyes. "How?" his brother asked in disbelief. "It's a long story which I would be happy to tell you after I have seen our sister," reminded Jon pointedly, and looked straight into Robb's eyes, making him understand his desire quite clearly. Robb saw how the nobility was looking at the two of them and looked at his brother sadly. It would do neither of them good if these lords saw Jon's outburst in the open once he learned what had truly happened. "Follow me, brother," he whispered solemnly, as he grasped ice from Jon's hands and helped him stand back on his feet. The worried feelings in Jon's heart grew more and more when Robb didn't directly look into his eyes and didn't say a word about Arya's condition. That was so unlike his brother, who equally cared about all their siblings. Regardless, he followed after Robb to the Lord Solar dutifully, if only to not give any ideas to the nobles in the courtyard. The moment they entered the Lord's Solar and the doors closed behind, Jon grabbed his brother roughly by his shoulders and looked him angrily in the eye. "Enough with the pomp, Robb." "Where is Arya?" asked Jon furiously, and paled when Robb's eyes teared up. "She's gone, brother." Jon felt a searing pain envelop his heart as he couldn't believe what he had just heard, but the tears in Robb's eyes and the grief on his brother's face made him go pale. "What?" he asked in disbelief and rising fury. "She succumbed to the wounds and torture she suffered at the hands of Lannisters and Vargo Hoat's men at Harrenhal. By the time we took the castle it was already too late. We tried our best, but she died 3 days earlier while you were coming here," confessed Robb sadly. "No. No. This can't be, you're lying." "I saw her in my dream and she was alive," roared Jon angrily, and pushed Robb away harshly. "You saw her in the crypts at Winterfell?" asked Robb in shock, making Jon look at him bitterly. "You had the same dream too. Then she's not dead." "She can't be, Stark," challenged Jon with a rage that Robb had never before heard in his brother's voice. "She passed when I woke up from that dream. I am not lying, brother. She wanted to see you, all of her siblings. It's why I believe we all had the same dream. She was saying goodbye, most importantly to you whom she loved most," suggested Robb somberly. "No." Jon yelled at him angrily in a voice full of disbelief, anger and grief all at the same as he came furiously at him, making Robb grasp him in a fierce embrace. "We were supposed to protect her. She can't be dead." "I know, brother. I am truly sorry," whispered Robb sadly. Those words took the fight out from his grief-struck brother as he collapsed to his knees, making Robb grab him even more firmly. For the first time in their life, Robb watched as Jon wept openly. He held his brother in a fierce embrace as they both grieved over their youngest sister's fate. Robb didn't know how long they stayed like that until he heard Jon whisper in defeat, "I want to see her." The king nodded and helped his brother back to his feet to fulfill his wish. Robb silently watched as Jon sat near Arya's cold corpse with tears falling from his eyes as he gently touched her pale face. They were both alone as he had barred all guards and servants to steer clear of this entire corridor and rooms nearby to give them the privacy they needed to grieve for their lost sister. He didn't dare reveal what he had learned about Arya's true fate to his brother just yet, for he truly needed to grieve her loss, for even if it was true that Arya lived through her direwolf by warging into the beast, it was yet to be found, and even if they managed to find her, she would never be human again. As such, Jon needed to grieve Arya's loss regardless, as Robb had done so himself these past few days. He was thankful to the Silent Sisters for covering most of the external wounds that Arya had suffered, for he doubted Jon would have stayed sane if he had seen her in the state Robb had found her in. Even so, he doubted his brother would not hunger for vengeance. "Where are the monsters who did this to our sister?" asked Jon in cold voice, that made shivers pass through Robb's entire body as he saw the pure murder in his brother's eyes. "Tortured and put to death. I allowed Roose Bolton to flay Vargo Hoat alive, for he was the one truly responsible," answered Robb fiercely. If it was anything else, Jon would have openly condemned such atrocities, and neither would have Robb approved them in the first place. But what the enemy had done to their sister made them deserve nothing less. "It's not enough," retorted Jon angrily. It isn't." Jon was surprised when his ever-honor-bound brother agreed with him without hesitation. Some part of his raging heart was satisfied when he saw the same cold anger in Robb's eyes demanding blood for blood. "A message needs to go to the Lannisters and their allies. House Lannister will be stripped of all titles, lands and rights from this day. They shall no longer be recognized as Lord Paramounts of the Westerlands. Their bannermen and allies including the Tyrells will meet the same fate should they not abandon Tywine within a fortnight once our ravens reach across the 7 kingdoms, delivering this decree in my name as king along with detailing all their crimes for every lord to hear across Westeros. I plan to lead a campaign into the Westerlands and reach to burn their lands and castles," swore Robb. "How will this affect Sansa?" "We cannot lose our last sister," warned Jon. "We rescued her from the capital, albeit at great cost. She will soon be escorted to Winterfell." Jon was shocked upon hearing that and listened in stunned silence as Robb told him of the suicide mission he had authorized when he was marching from the Vale to rescue their eldest sister. House Maljanumber had led a group of 100 men in this mad endeavor and succeeded, but at heavy cost. "Theon's dead?" asked Jon hesitantly. The Greyjoy had never been his friend, but to hear he laid down his life in a rearguard action to ensure Sangza escaped the capital with Smalljan and the Hound of all people helping in this task. I have already sent a raven to his family in the Iron Islands informing of his heroic and selfless action. He will be honored, said Rob sadly. He kept his word to you, and for that I can respect him. But his father Balon may not look upon this favorably. To him it will only look like we sent his last living son on a suicide mission to save our family at the cost of his heir, warned John, earning a worried nod from Rob. The Ironborn had so far only done minor raids on the northern shores just to test our defenses and not a full-blown invasion, considering we still had Theon. Now that he is dead, they may attack us seeking vengeance, which is why I have ordered majority of the levies Bran has already mustered to be sent to Deepwood Motte, the villages near the Stony Shore, White Harbor, and Bear Island as per Bran's original idea. I also received word that the 4,000 reinforcements you sent under Lord Glover and Lord Blackwood few weeks ago have entered the north. Lord Tytos will reinforce Winterfell with half of those, mostly infantry, while Lord Glover will take overall command of all forces across the north to mount a solid defense. Bran has already sent 500 Northmen to the wall to provide additional support. Apparently the wildlings are going to mount an attack soon, explained Rob. John pursed his lips as he pondered over the situation Lord Commander Mormont would be facing. His blood demanded him to avenge Arya at all costs and support Rob, but he was still a brother of the Night's Watch and had a duty to aid them against the threats from beyond the wall. Do you wish to defend the wall and aid the Night's Watch? With your and House Stark's help, they have received hundreds of new recruits to strengthen their position and supply situation as well. I would not hold it against you if it is your wish to aid them, said Rob hesitantly. A part of me wants to, another wishes to fight by your side and make the Lannisters pay. I do not know which is right, confessed John as he sadly looked at Arya's pale face, and wondered how Rob would react if he told him of his parentage now. Looking at his brother's sad and worried gaze made him push back that thought for now, knowing it was not the right time. Take your time. Whatever you decide, you have my support, although I can't spare more men for the wall at present if you go. Not with a two-front war possibly opening up for us, said Rob reluctantly. I understand. Let me think about this and I will let you know my decision soon. Maybe the Ironborn think for once and attack the Westerlands for their hand in Theon's death, suggested John hopefully. I am not holding my breath for Balon Greyjoy or his ilk to act smartly, replied Rob with a frown. John nodded, knowing it was the truth, and looked back at Arya. He wanted to curse the gods for being so cruel to a child like her and to their family, but knew it was pointless. Arya's death cannot go unanswered, Rob. The Lannisters must pay in blood, and while I agree with your plan, it's not enough, said John bitterly, as he clenched his fist shut angrily. If only he could kill Vargo Hoat all over again. For a moment, he felt bitter towards Rob for stealing that vengeance from him, but couldn't fault him for doing so when Arya was as much a sister to him as well. Maybe more. A small part of his heart felt resentful over Sansa's rescue, knowing they failed to do the same for Arya in time. Sansa had not been as close to him as Arya had been. Knowing Sansa got to live and Arya didn't made him even more resentful at fate for being so cruel, and at himself as well for even having these thoughts. I agree, which is why Jaime Lannister will be executed today. I waited for your return so you could see Tywin's dearest son pay for our sister's murder, promised Rob icily. John looked at Rob and then at Arya, feeling if only a little solace in his heart at the king's decision. Nothing would bring their sister back, but killing Jaime would make Tywin feel what loss truly was, which made him yearn for it. Let me do it. You need not sully your hands with the Kingslayer's blood. You did right by our sister by killing the men who killed her. I will never see Arya again. Let me ensure Tywin never sees his dearest son as well. I have never asked you for anything, but I need this, said John seriously. Rob looked at him for a long moment before walking forward to stand by his side near Arya's bed. The king looked at their sister's body with vengeance burning in his eyes before turning to look straight into Jon's eyes. Then do it with this in the name of House Stark, father, and Arya ordered Rob fiercely. Jon looked at House Stark's ancestral sword ice that was being offered to him by the first Stark king in centuries. He merely gave a fierce nod in return. Jaime Lannister was roughly marched by a heavily armed group of Stark guards under the command of Edmure Tully through Riverrun's corridor. It was evening, yet he felt something amiss when he felt an eerie silence across the ancient castle. He was marched through the courtyard and led straight outside the gates of the castle, where he saw a large army comprised of banners from the north, Riverlands and the Vale. Shockingly, What stunned him even more was a raised dais upon which stood the bastard son of Eddard Stark with House Stark's ancestral sword ice in his hands and a wooden block near him. He saw Robb Stark with a strange crown atop his head sitting in front of the stage alongside many prominent lords from the north, Riverlands and the Vale in attendance who looked at him in silence. Having been locked in the dungeons of Riverrun with a group of cold Stark guards who never said a word to him left him completely devoid of what the bloody hell had been happening in the war between their factions. "You will join your brother soon," Kingslayer spat Edmure Tully angrily. "What?" asked Jaime in shock. Had the trout fool lost his wits? Tyrion couldn't be dead. Haven't you heard? Tyrion Lannister perished trying to defend King's Landing from Stannis' army. The Baratheon Lord has already breached the city and soon will put Cersei and your bastards to death. We rescued Sansa Stark from your capital while your father tries to save his legacy, but his true crime is his hand in the murder of Arya Stark at Harrenhal, rebuked Edmure, clearly not giving Jaime the information that the Reach had sided with the Lannisters and Stannis might just be beaten back. He could see the Kingslayer was speechless as his mind simply became overwhelmed by the rapid onslaught of developments inflicted upon him. Tywin's eldest son asked question after question but Edmure didn't answer. The Kingslayer challenged him but he kept his silence and simply marched the man to the gallows where Jon awaited with a cold look in his eyes. Jaime was dragged up the stairs and forcefully made to kneel by a group of Stark guards as he glared hatefully at Robb Stark before looking at Jon Snow who readied the sword once carried by Eddard Stark. "What the hell are you doing, Snow?" asked Jaime furiously, and only earned a cold glare from the bastard. "In the name of King Robb of House Stark, first of his name, King of the North, Riverlands and the Vale, I, Jon Snow, sentence you Jaime Lannister to death for your crimes in the murder of Lord Jon Arryn, of betraying King Robert Baratheon as a Kingsguard by fathering incestuous bastards with Cersei Lannister his queen, of playing an important part in Tywin's Lannister's butchery across the Riverlands," declared Jon coldly, in a voice devoid of any emotion other than one of hatred. "Any last word?" Jaime realized the boy was deadly serious when nobody said a word as the Stark army watched in stunned silence as Jon grasped House Stark's great sword with both hands. "My father." Jon gave a vengeful roar and brought down ice in a swift arc forever separating the golden lion's head from his body mercilessly. He and everyone else watched in cold silence as Jaime Lannister's head rolled over the gallows as the shocked eyes of Tywin's eldest and dearest son looked at his executioner as a final sight in death. The North remembers, Kingslayer. Chapter 15. Truth. Edmure Tully had been wishing to avoid a fateful encounter for as long as possible, yet he was forced to face it when Jon Snow finally confronted him in his solar at Riverrun. After taking Jaime Lannister's head, the boy's reputation had grown even more, including the Rivermen making the guards at Edmure's door dare not stop the White Wolf who had equal number of victories in the war now as their king. "Lord Edmure, what happened in the Reach and where is Sam?" Jon's face lost all color when he saw Edmure look away from his piercing gaze. The same guilt as Robb had when he announced Arya had died. "Sam's gone," admitted Edmure sadly. As Jon listened to the tale of Edmure being confronted Randyll Tarly and Tyrell soldiers before they could meet the Reach Overlord and his main army, he could not help but remember of Robin Flint warning him that he would lose soldiers, friends and even family as the war dragged on. His fists clenched in anger as he heard of how the once cowardly Sam volunteered alongside a few Rivermen in a doomed delaying action to allow Edmure to run away, if only to not destroy Robb's campaign with the future Lord of the Riverlands not getting captured by their enemy. He could still be alive. "I doubt his own father would execute him," offered Edmure hopefully, upon seeing Jon's heartbreak grow even more upon hearing of his friend's sacrifice. "His father warned him never to enter his lands or even near him, otherwise he shall execute him. I doubt a hard man like Randyll would not carry out his threat when Sam clearly attacked his forces to save you," refused Jon in despair. "Jon. I couldn't save my sister and now I sent another dear friend to his death," lamented Jon, with guilt clearly visible across his distraught face. "The fault isn't yours, but mine," replied Edmure honorably, as he got from up his seat to comfort the boy only to receive a brief hard stare. "You went there on my request, Sam did too. I've won every battle, and yet I am still losing all that are dear to me one after another." Before Edmure could offer some comfort to the young lad whom he had come to respect, Jon turned around and stormed out of his room. One of his guards looked at him sympathetically from the door awaiting his decision, which Edmure made quickly. "Tell the king what has happened and that his brother will need him." Robb had been in the middle of formulating battle strategies for the upcoming campaign into the Westerlands and the Reach despite it being the middle of the night. It had been a day since Jaime Lannister was executed and he had personally seen the ravens being sent from Riverrun all across the Seven Kingdoms of the fate of Jaime Lannister and his entire house alongside its allies should they continue standing against him. They had also sent Arya's bones back to Winterfell under an honor guard and once again he wondered how this would affect his family, especially his mother who would be devastated. How could he look her in the eye again after saving one of her daughters and failing to do the same for the other? The sight of Jon taking Jaime's head gave him some satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. The men that Bryden Tully had sent to locate Arya's direwolf Nymeria had not yet returned, and he worried if they failed to do so, then his sister was truly lost. If that wasn't enough, he had received a messenger from Lord Walder Free who had also learned of Arya's death as of that of his 3 kinsmen slaughtered at Harrenhal by Tywin's men. The old weasel had strongly demanded Robb to marry one of his daughters urgently, with Arya who was betrothed to one of his grandsons having died thereby nullifying a part of the agreement for his support. The bastard weasel had demanded the rescued Sansa as a replacement for Robb's younger dead sister. Robb would have taken the Lecher's head off for his audacity, but he needed the Freys and he remembered Torrhen Stark's advice to him to honor his oaths. He had refused Lord Walder's request to arrange a betrothal between Sansa and one of his sons, for Robb's sister had already suffered enough at the hands of Lannisters for a lifetime. He would not condemn her to a life of misery at the Twins. He had already agreed to foster more Freys at Winterfell, alongside a respectful sum of spoils from the Westerlands campaign to the old weasel in honor of his kinsman who died for Robb. Most importantly, he had agreed to marry Roslyn Free, originally chosen by his mother from the barely eligible daughters of Lord Walder. His only condition was the wedding to be taken place immediately at Riverrun as he didn't have the time to visit the twins. His squire Oliver Free and Sir Pewin Free had been extremely pleased at the news as their sister would soon become Queen of 3 Kingdoms immediately and even more should Robb conquer additional kingdoms. Still, the Freys had demanded more for Arya's loss, which was why Lord Bolton entered his chambers a few minutes later and gave a short bow. "Your Grace, you sent for me?" asked Roose in his ever stoic voice. "Yes, Lord Bolton. I thank you for coming at this hour for I am in need of your inputs," said Robb seriously, earning a nod from the Lord of Dreadfort. "As everyone will come to know soon enough, I have agreed to marry Roslyn Free here in Riverrun 2 days from now as the Freys were worried about my promise to them since Arya has died, leaving them with one less betrothal with House Stark. We need their infantrymen currently supporting the defense of the north under Lord Glover as well as their cavalry who helped Jon defeat Stafford's host and are currently still in the Westerlands under the Great Jon," began Robb. "That is a wise decision, Your Grace. Slighting Lord Walder at such a sensitive time would have been detrimental to our cause," cautioned Roose, earning a nod from the young Stark. "I thought as much, however he still demands a marriage replacement for Arya. I will never consent to give him Sansa's hand, she is worth far more and has already suffered enough. In return, Lord Frey's messenger suggested I offer him the hand of one of my most prominent lords for marriage to his daughters. He has offered the girls weight in gold as dowry along with a small holdfast near the twins for their younger children now that our kingdoms are one," explained Robb. Roose eyed him for a long moment, making Robb nervous, but he didn't show a hint of emotion to the former archenemies of his house. "That is a generous proposal and you wish for me to take it?" asked Roose, making Robb take a deep breath before replying. "It is not a command, Lord Bolton. I have not forgotten your assistance in bringing my sister's killers to justice and forsaking your honor for my own. I promised you a good marriage proposal to stabilize your house's future. Should you choose to take this offer you will gain a bride, a good sum of gold and lands for your heirs trueborn or otherwise. Basis your personal decision," answered Robb carefully. "You have thought this through well, Your Grace." "I would be honored to accept," replied Roose with a curt nod, earning a brief smile from Robb. "Then we shall have our weddings together at Riverrun and march together for the next campaign. I assume Ramsay Snow is already on his way south to join us?" questioned Robb. "He is." "Good, I would suggest you choose your bride. The messenger has brought rough hand-drawn pictures of Lord Walder's daughters and granddaughters for your choosing," suggested Robb awkwardly. "I will do so." "Thank you, Your Grace," replied Roose with another nod. "That will be all then, Lord Bolton." Roose nodded and gave a brief bow before turning around to march towards the exit, only to be stopped by Robb's next words. "I am thankful for your loyal service, Lord Bolton. I will ensure you are given a good command in the next campaign and some opportunities to score good plunder for your house from Tywin's lands. Although I wish you to keep this between us, more importantly your men or bastard son are not to torture the enemy's small folk or carry out questionable practices without my approval. You have fought for me well so far, continue doing so and House Bolton will see its dues paid in full by its king, said Robb decisively. Very well, your grace. I am glad you are honoring my house's service to your noble cause. We will continue to support you, said Roose frankly. Robb gave a thankful nod which made Roose finally leave the room, and only then the king slumped in his chair. If dealing with the Frys was an exhausting affair, then ensuring the Boltons remained loyal was an even deadlier action. But it was what he had signed up for when he accepted the burden of kingship. The Frys and Boltons had been loyal to him so far. Some of his other lords might feel a bit jealous of him granting them a few favors, but it had to be done to maintain their loyalty. Before he could think of retiring to sleep, he was disturbed by one of the guards sent by his uncle Edmure telling him Jon needed his help. Robb wanted nothing more than to sleep, but his brother had loyally served him and he would be there for him at all costs. As expected, he found the brooding bastard in the Godswood in Riverrun sitting in a corner near the weirwood tree with a solemn expression on his face. His brother looked up when he saw Robb approaching towards him. Lord Edmure sent you. He shouldn't have, you have more important things to worry about, stated Jon irritatedly, as Robb came forward to sit by his side. We're family, Jon. I'll always have your back, reassured Robb, as he laid a comforting hand upon Jon's shoulder. Sam's gone too, Robb. Robb was surprised overhearing that, making Jon finally explain of how he had decided to send Edmure Tully along with Sam to the Tyrells in order to broker an alliance, only for it to backfire and would have probably turned into a complete disaster if Edmure had been captured by Randyll Tully, if not for Sam's sacrifice along with a few of Edmure's soldiers. While agreeing with his decision of courting the Tyrells, Robb was not pleased that Jon was willing to broker a marriage alliance for him with them overpassing the one he had with the Frys. He conveyed his own feelings to Jon without hesitation on that matter. I made a mistake, and another friend died for it. Same as Robin Flint at Golden Tooth, confessed Jon miserably, making Robb press his half-brother's shoulder comfortingly. We all make mistakes, Jon. Being in command of men will many times result in them going to their deaths following your orders. I lost many good men and dear friends in my first victory against the Lannisters. Their faces haunts my dreams quite often at nights, admitted Robb sadly. Then how do you fight on? Continue believing in yourself when your soldiers, friends and even family fall, asked Jon hesitantly. Because there is no other choice. Sam will not want you to break over his sacrifice. He died for you and would wish you to achieve justice for him. Fight with me to subdue the Reach, it would be the best way you can honor him, advised Robb honestly. Jon was silent for several long moments before giving a weak nod and looked at his brother gratefully. You must be strong, Jon. Should I fall in battle in the future, I want you to continue the war as Bran and Rickon can't lead armies, said Robb, earning a sharp look from his brother. You're not dying, Stark. Not on my watch, replied Jon fiercely with determination, making Robb smile sadly. It's war, Jon. None of us can guarantee it. Tywin will want my head for ordering Jaime's execution and declaring for his house to be stripped of everything. I want to ensure an able Stark is in command of our armies to carry on the fight should something happen to me in battle or by treachery. I am not a Stark. You will be tomorrow morning on my decree. Jon was speechless after hearing what he had from his brother's lips, even as Robb gave him a genuine smile. Robb, I had already decided upon it when I was in the Vale. You are my brother and risked everything for our family, including your honor and life. I know all your life you wanted to be recognized as a Stark and not as Snow. I will fulfill that wish and would ask you to continue this war as a Stark should I fall by any chance, promised Robb sincerely. Guilt flooded Jon's heart once again as he remembered he had not yet told his brother about his parents' identity revealed to him by Eddard Stark's last letter. He had not even shown it to Robb despite carrying right now in fear of his brother not looking at him the same way afterwards once he learned the truth. But he would not betray Robb by concealing this fact any longer, not when his brother wanted to grant Jon his greatest wish. Do you really mean that, Robb? Your mother won't be pleased, as do some of the lords, said Jon worriedly. I trust you with my life and our house's future, Jon. You are my brother, now and always. I will give you what you deserve, no matter what the others think, including my mother, swore Robb truthfully. Jon's eyes became a little moist as he looked away. It was perhaps the greatest moment of his life so far and at the same time one of the most difficult, as he chose to not take advantage of his brother's faith and love for him. The king was surprised when Jon procured a letter from his side and presented it to him. "Robb, there is something you should know." The young wolf didn't miss the fear or hesitation in his brother's voice as he grasped the letter and was surprised upon seeing a broken seal of House Stark upon it. Sir Barristan Selmy was removed by Cersei and Joffrey from the King's Guard. He made a mockery of Joffrey and would have died had Varys the Spider not helped him to escape King's Landing. It was Varys who helped Barristan smuggle ice from the city to deliver to us, but most importantly also a last letter which father had written to you before he confronted the Lannisters over their crimes, confessed Jon, making Robb stare at him in shock. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" asked the king a little angrily. "It's because I was afraid." Robb was now even more worried of what his brother could have truly learned from their father to make him feel like this. "I would never harm you, brother," defended Robb, feeling a little insulted, making Jon sigh. "Read it and we shall see." Robb grunted irritatedly but chose to accept Jon's wish. As he opened the letter, his eyes became moist upon recognizing his father's handwriting, and the fact that he had addressed this to him made his heart clench. Jon watched in great anxiety within his heart as Robb read the letter as the color drained from his brother's face with every passing moment. A lone tear fell from the king's eyes as he reached the end and grasped the paper a little tighter. "Robb," whispered Jon worriedly, making his brother look at him reluctantly. "I don't understand, how could he lie? He was the most honorable man I knew," muttered the king in disbelief. "He gave up his honor for his sister and me," admitted Jon regretfully. "You're my cousin," whispered Robb in disbelief, earning a grim nod from Jon. Robb became silent for several long moments, which only further increased the tension within Jon's heart until his brother finally spoke. "If this is true, then you are the rightful heir to the Iron Throne," spoke Robb with a grim realization. "I don't want it." "Who in the right mind wants to be king when it's such a miserable job?" denied Jon quickly and with clear reluctance in his voice, which made Robb give a weak grin in return. "Father wanted me to support Stannis, but it's not possible now. He loved you as his own son and gave up his honor to protect you. It's enough to make me see him with a little more respect, for he chose his family and friends over his honor in life and until the moment he died. Do you really wish not to claim your birthright? I can only imagine my mother losing her shit once she learns this. It's me usurping your right and not the other way around like she always fears," said Robb with an amused chuckle. "There is hardly any evidence except father's testimony which some may believe, others would not," pointed Jon, making Robb look straight into his eyes. "Regardless, I believe father's word above everything, with or without proof. If you wish, I will try my best to see you achieve your right place as king of Westeros, but I am not sure if the kingdoms sworn to me at present would bend the knee to a Targaryen, not when they were the ones who destroyed that dynasty in the rebellion alongside the Baratheons. I also wonder if I should call you Daeron or Jon, it's all damn confusing." Jon's mouth was open in shock as he heard of what his brother just offered, which most men would never even consider in their wildest fantasies. "You're insane," whispered Jon in disbelief, making Robb finally chuckle. "I am your brother, now and always. You fought for me loyally, I shall do the same for you if that is your desire," offered Robb without hesitation. Tears arrived in Jon's eyes as he looked at Robb in shock and disbelief, to only earn a reassuring smile and a firm squeeze on the shoulder. "I thought you would hate me like Lady Stark after learning this, it was why I hesitated in telling you," confessed Jon. "I am not her. I am Robb Stark, your brother. No matter who gave birth to you, the same father raised us both, and that will never change. Never forget that," reminded Robb calmly. He smiled when Jon came forward to envelop him in a fierce hug, which Robb returned without hesitation. When they parted once his brother was calm again, Robb could see how relieved Jon looked upon hearing what he had promised. "All my life I wanted to be a Stark, more than anything. A part of me wonders and maybe grieves a little about the Targaryen family I come from, except for Maester Aemon hardly anyone is left of the dragons. Many in Westeros don't have fond memories of Targaryens after what the Mad King did. It pains me even more so of learning that one half of my ancestors killed the other half. I chose the black and swore an oath. I do not wish to be king," explained Jon truthfully. "Are you certain?" asked Robb once again. "I am. You have given me more than anyone else ever has, The fact that you were willing to sacrifice your crown for my sake despite of how it would affect our campaign shows you care about me truly. You are my king, now and always, swore Jon sincerely. If that is truly your wish, then I accept. You shall be a Stark on 2 conditions, stated Robb with a brief smile. What are they? Asked Jon carefully. Lysa swore the veil to me upon the condition I protect Petri Baelish. But from father's testimony, there is a good chance he betrayed him. You will help me find the truth of his crime and help us achieve justice for father, said Robb seriously. It will be my pleasure, assured Jon fiercely. Most importantly, as king I wish to find a way to release you from the Night's Watch. If I am to rule this land, I will need my family by my side. Bran and Rickon will hold the north and will serve as my heirs to the kingdom until I have children of my own. The Tullys will hold the Riverlands in my name. I will find a way to bind the veil more firmly to us once I deal with Lysa if she played a hand in father's death. That leaves the Westerlands, which we shall conquer and destroy the Lannisters forever, explained Robb carefully. I agree with most of your plan to tie the kingdoms closer to you, but I am brother of the Night's Watch, protested Jon, earning a sigh from Robb. You bloody fool. You will be more effective to the Watch for the rest of your life with my plan. One man cannot aid the Watch much, but the new Lord Paramount of Westerlands that I appoint will be, exclaimed Robb in exasperation. Who? Asked Jon worriedly, and had a bad feeling in his heart when Robb gave him a smirk and smacked his head. You, stupid fool. I will need someone I trust fully to hold those lands in my name once the Lannisters are finished. I can't trust any other lord to do it, be they from the current Westerlands nobility, many of whom I fear will also be deposed if they continue to support the Lannisters. Bran will inherit Winterfell, and since he can't have children in his condition, our ancestral seat and the north will eventually go to Rickon, with myself and my future heirs having to manage these damned kingdoms. That leaves me with you, and if I am to be miserable, then I will ensure you suffer lordly duties as well, teased Robb. The lords, your mother, you can't ask, muttered Jon in a stunned whisper. I don't have to. I am the king. If there was ever any shred of doubt in Jon's heart over Robb's determination, it vanished in this moment as he saw his brother's mind was set on this. He would find a way to make it happen, as impossible as it seemed right now. It only validated his decision of choosing to abandon any aim for a crown, no matter how tempting, for he had no desire for it. He may have been born for it, but Robb had the will and talent to truly be a good ruler instead. His brother's next words only lent credence to Jon's thoughts. The Reach will be a thorn in my side with or without the Tyrells in charge if we win the war, either by defeating their armies in battle or them abandoning the Lannisters out of fear in the future, if we cause harm to their lands and prestige. I can't trust them fully after what they have done, which is why I need a strong ally leading the Westerlands which borders their territory. With some luck and cunning, I will also try to find a way to get the Stormlands and Dorne on our side in the future to pincer the Reach from all sides. To that effect, I have already sent an additional letter to Doran Martell asking for his support and fealty. It's a long shot which may mostly fail, but your victory against the Mountain who killed their princess, as well destroying Lannister armies and taking Jaime's head, should be a good enough reason to make them join us if they are wise. As for the Stormlands, I have already deployed Lord Rickard Karstark and the Vale fleet to take Dragonstone alongside taking custody of Shireen Baratheon. Should Stannis fall in battle against the Lannisters in King's Landing, I wish to appoint his only daughter to lead her house in the Stormlands. Although it will be next to impossible if Stannis somehow survives his current engagement, but I have ordered Lord Karstark to capture him in such a scenario for a future decision. Jon could only listen in stunned silence, and despite the uncertainties alongside difficult challenges, Robb had a plan to turn this war in their favor. This is exactly why you should be king and not me. I don't want to deal with all this mess and politics for the rest of my life, said Jon frankly, earning a tired sigh and nod from Robb at the same time. Will you accept? Asked the king decisively. Lord Commander Mormont or the Night's Watch may not release me from my oath, Robb reminded Jon. We have already sent the Watch hundreds of men and supplies, so has Bran. I'll send them 10 times more as I continue taking prisoners in this war who refuse to kneel before me. The Watch will be hard-pressed to decline my offer to get more reinforcements than they have received in half a century for the price of releasing one man. I will send the proposal to Lord Commander Mormont tomorrow itself should you accept my offer. Let's hear what the old bear has to say, proposed Robb. I will accept your offer and hold the Westerlands for you once we conquer it, But only if I am released from the Night's Watch by the Lord Commander, countered Jon with determination. Very well. And you better not chicken out later, Snow. Or I'll get you married to a Free. The king laughed heartily upon seeing the instant nod and the sheer look of terror on his battle-hardened brother's face. Next day, Edmure Tully was feeling only a little conflicted with what was happening in front of his eyes, right inside his castle in front of all the present nobles from the north, Riverlands and the Vale. His uncle Bryden didn't seem to care much, maybe even was in favor of it to an extent. But Edmure knew Catelyn would rage like the fury of winter once she heard of what was happening right now, as the bastard son of Eddard Stark knelt before King Robb Stark in the presence of all nobles, many notable army commanders and even common soldiers. In recognition of honorable, loyal and faithful service to House Stark, your king, and to the kingdoms under my rulership, I, King Robb of House Stark, first of my name, King of the North, Riverlands and the Vale, hereby declare you Jon Snow to be recognized as a legitimate member of House Stark from this day forth. You shall be known as Jon Stark till the end of your days, declared Robb seriously, as he laid ice upon Jon's right shoulder. It will be my honor, your grace. I hereby pledge my loyal service to you, your future heirs and the kingdoms under your rulership. I will fight till my last breath for you, promised Jon sincerely. Robb nodded before turning to the lords around them decisively, who had mixed emotions in their eyes upon the decision of their king. But the same could not be said about many commanders and common soldiers who saw it as a man being rewarded for his achievements in spite of his birth. And Jon Stark had achieved that by killing the Mountain in single combat, capturing the Golden Tooth with a small force and destroying Stafford Lannister's army with less than a third fighting men under his command against the enemy's own forces. I shall be marrying Roslyn Free as per my oath to Lord Waylor Free in 2 days' time. Until I have heirs of my own, Prince Brandon Stark is my immediate heir, followed by Prince Rickon Stark and Princess Sansa Stark thereafter. Should anything happen to them in this war, then Jon Stark will be my heir and your future king. Should I die in battle or through treachery by any chance, Jon Stark will take command of our armies and will crown my son, should I have any by that time, to kingship or fight for King Brandon Stark. Our kingdom will live on, declared Robb fiercely. The roar unleashed by the Northmen was deafening, and they were soon joined by Riverlanders and Valymen alike. Upon seeing the ferocious support of their commanders and common soldiers, even the nobles from these lands gave firm nods to their king's decree, with many even supporting his decision now that Robb had explained the reasoning behind the same. Jon couldn't help but admire his brother's quick thinking. Nobles could switch loyalties if their king fell, but many in the army dearly loved Robb. Especially the common soldiers and lower-ranked officers from lesser nobility, or those that rose from a commoner to command roles due to their leadership. Any lord wishing to abandon the Stark dynasty in the event of Robb's death would have to answer to their men now that the lines of succession and leadership of their army were so clearly defined, and with the fact that their king would soon marry and open the way to having his own heirs to secure the line of succession. The fact that a bastard was legitimized for his merit would only serve to boost the morale of their common soldiers and junior officers to fight more fiercely for their cause in hopes of getting similar recognition and rewards from their king. I have also sent a proposal to the Night's Watch to release Jon Stark from his oath in exchange for further aid to their order. He will be of more use to our cause here than as a black brother. That is my decision, declared Robb in finality, daring anyone to challenge him. No one did, not even the Tullys, much to Jon's shock, even if he saw Edmure looked conflicted but chose to keep his silence like everyone else. Jaime Lannister's execution and the decree of destroying House Lannister root and stem, making many nobles dare not question their king, or risk his ire and meet the same fate. As Jon Stark stood back on his feet and embraced his brother and king, their direwolves Greywind and Ghost arrived by their side. Bryden Tully watched the morale of everyone present increase greatly upon seeing the eldest sons of Eddard Stark standing united with their direwolves. It was a sight he would never forget. The young wolf and the white wolf. Both had come south to save their family, and while they had faced great setbacks including the loss of a father and one sister and good friends, the brothers had never lost a single battle in their respective campaigns. Now they were more united than ever and about to embark on a truly challenging campaign against the wealthiest realms of the Seven Kingdoms. Eddard, you truly did raise fine sons. 2 days later. Ever since returning from the Westerlands, Jon had experienced loss and grief to begin with. First upon learning of Arya's fate and then of Sam's. Their deaths still made his heart clench, but taking Jaime Lannister's head and being finally made a Stark by Robb himself made his resolve harden once more. For the first time, he had a real direction in his life. As a child he had often wondered if someday he could serve Robb and gain a small holdfast of his own someday, but those hopes were crushed due to Catelyn's dislike of him, which made him join the Night's Watch instead to not create unrest in his family for the rest of their lives. But now everything had changed once again. Robb hadn't revealed it yet to anyone, but his plans to name Jon as Warden of the West once House Lannister was destroyed made him more determined. His brother had great plans, as he wished to not just erase the Lannisters forever from history, but also all their supporting houses in the West and Reach. Those lands and castles, especially in the Westerlands, will be given to loyal northern houses sworn to the old gods, alongside a few from the Riverlands and maybe even the Vale houses to maintain loyalty and parity. All of these newly appointed nobles who will in turn swear themselves to Jon himself as Warden of the West. Just as Aegon the Conqueror had written his own history, King Robb Stark would write his own saga. A part of Jon hesitated. From being known as only a bastard and a brother of the Night's Watch, his rise under Robb's command had been phenomenal. Just like Orys Baratheon had under Aegon the Conqueror. Catelyn Stark and many others from the nobility may still not like this rise, but Robb wanted it, as he needed his family in the south in leadership roles to truly secure his reign and not just hold the north for him. A task which Jon would loyally fulfill if Lord Commander Mormont agreed with the same reasoning sent by Robb in his latest letter, along with an offer of a large army of recruits to truly resolve the Watch's manpower problems. A brief smile arrived upon his lips on seeing his brother kneeling in front of the weirwood tree in Riverrun's Godswood, as was the northern custom of marriage, followed by House Stark and many others' houses from their ancient kingdom. Beside the king, was Roslyn Free, who would soon become their queen and Jon's good sister by law. Jon was relieved that Robb had honored his oath and was marrying Walder Free's daughter now that Arya was gone. It would placate the old weasel of the twins. More importantly, it would secure the loyalty of the Free hosts in the Westerlands and the North, which was vital for the war. Roslyn Free was a little smaller in stature than Jon's brother and looked quite delicate, with her pale white skin, small nose and long brown hair which reached her waist. She was pretty as a southern flower according to many Northmen, and their king could have done much worse considering the tales he had heard of the Free women. Robb neither looked happy or angry but remained stoic as he put their house's cloak over Roslyn's shoulders and kissed the girl, soon after earning a wave of cheers from all the nobles, especially many of the Freys who had arrived for the wedding, including Lord Walder, who had dragged his bony ass to Riverrun to ensure he finally got a king to marry into his house. A great feat for a bannerman of House Tully. Jon could only wish that the rest of their family could have been here to see Robb being married, especially their sisters, who would have loved the entire affair. Maybe not Arya, who would have scowled at being forced to act like a lady. Sorrow gripped his heart once more as he lamented his greatest loss and failure, which only made him more determined to protect his remaining siblings. It was why he stepped forward towards his brother's side, flanked by Ghost, when a group of Freys were about to approach to lift the king upon their shoulders to take him to the wedding feast. The sight of the White Wolf with his stony gaze alongside the menacing glare from Ghost made the Freys pause. Lord Walder Free looked at him with great interest, with the weasel having probably learned of Jon's legitimization. It was why the White Wolf met the Lord of the Crossings' eyes without a flinch. "Allow me and the Northmen the honor to carry my brother and king upon our shoulders," Lord Walder said Jon diplomatically. "Yes, yes. I would be a fool to piss off the White Wolf now, would I, heh?" croaked Lord Walder with an amused smirk. The man shut his mouth when Ghost merely growled a little, making many Northmen cheer and arrive to help Jon lift their king upon their shoulders, as the Freys and Rivermen did the same for Queen Roslyn. Robb looked at him gratefully, earning an amused smirk from Jon. "I've got your back, Stark." Chapter 16. Dark Wings. King's Landing. Kevan Lannister walked through their large army camp with a heavy heart and for once didn't greet or acknowledge the bows of many soldiers and officers from their lands. He was not certain of how these men would feel once they learned of the series of catastrophes that had happened in the past several weeks. He looked in the distance and saw the majority of their army was currently occupied with breaching the walls of King's Landing, with Stannis' army desperately trying to hold them back. 4 attempts had been made and all had been repulsed with heavy losses by the Baratheon king. Even if he was a prickly man, none could deny Stannis was a formidable military commander who had swiftly taken the capital in spite of Tyrion's heroic defense. Kevan's nephew had fought as best as he could despite being heavily outnumbered, even destroyed a good portion of Stannis' fleet at Blackwater Bay. However, when news of King Joffrey's flight reached the men, many lost hope but continued resisting Stannis' army until Tyrion fell in battle alongside his squire. With no reinforcements arriving in time, it was the final straw as the city watch lost all cohesion upon the death of its commander and the flight of its king. Stannis didn't waste the chance and stormed in to lead a bloody sack of the capital and had already been battering at the walls of the Red Keep when the next day Tywine and the armies of the West and Reach finally arrived with 70,000 men hungry for a fight. Seeing the Tyrell banners in the distance made him grimace. If only Mace Tyrell had not insisted on hosting a feast in Tywine's honor upon meeting him there by wasting valuable time which allowed the city to fall and leading to Tyrion's death. Their only solace was that upon realizing the collapse of the Red Keep's gates was imminent, Varys had smuggled Cersei, King Joffrey, Prince Tommen and a small retinue outside of the keep through secret tunnels built by the Targaryens and known only to the Spider. It was a risky gamble, but the royal family was safely escorted back into Tywine's hands. Stannis had gained the city and the crown alongside the Red Keep, but the Baratheon king was now trapped with an army nearly 4 times his own forces battering at his gates. His end was near and Tywine would ensure Stannis didn't meet a good fate at all costs, for Kevan's brother had stoically looked at Tyrion's corpse with a cold glare before marching off to command their armies. The Old Lion was even more furious with his daughter upon learning that Sansa Stark had escaped from Cersei's clutches from the Red Keep itself at the hands of a heroic commando unit made up of Northmen, Riverlanders and Valymen under King Robb Stark. Those brave men had fought valiantly and laid down their lives to allow Sansa's escape with the help of the Hound of all people. Cersei had tried her best to defend her failures alongside Joffrey, but as Kevan carried a fateful letter in his hands only now he realized the dear price of that mistake. As he entered the command tent, Kevan saw Tywine being surrounded by Cersei, Joffrey, Mace Tyrell alongside a few lords from the West and Reach, with most currently occupied with preparing their armies for a renewed offensive to take King's Landing. "You're late," Kevan remarked Tywine, and looked at him calmly, but his gaze demanded an explanation nonetheless. "I would like to speak with you in private, my lord," said Kevan calmly. Tywine gazed at him for a long moment even as Mace Tyrell blustered about being included in any new news. If only the Fool of Highgarden was as good at commanding armies as his sons Garlan and Loras currently preparing for the attack on the city. "Lord Tyrell, we will speak on any news soon. Now, I would like to talk to my brother," commanded Tywine. "Of course, Lord Tywine. Mayhaps we can have a private meeting later," asked Mace eagerly. Tywine merely gave a frustrated nod which only Kevan and Cersei understood as the Lord Paramount of the Reach went out of the tent alongside all the other lords. It was foolish to expect Cersei or Joffrey would leave, and Kevan didn't say anything on their continued presence when Tywine himself didn't say anything, which only meant he wanted them to stay. "What news do you bring, Uncle Kevan?" asked Cersei curiously, making Kevan grimace. Tywine watched as his brother silently walked towards him and presented him a letter bearing the Stark direwolf sigil. "This came from Hayford Castle. Similar letters are landing all across the Crown lands, and if initial reports are feared then all across the Seven Kingdoms," spoke Kevan plainly. Cersei and Joffrey both got up from their seats when Tywine made no motion to read it out aloud when he opened the unsealed letter, the boy king having already been given a lashing of a lifetime by his grandfather upon arriving at King's Landing for his failure to defend the city made him keep his mouth shut for now. Kevan could still remember how Joffrey had nearly threatened to execute Tywine for that insolence, only for the Old Lion to ask for a private audience with his grandson. No one learned what happened in that meeting, but Joffrey came out unscratched but with the fear of the stranger in his eyes. He watched as for the first time in years, and only after his wife Joanna's death, Tywine Lannister was immersed in the deepest fury of hell itself as the Old Lion read the message. "No." Cersei's howl of sorrow and anguish was heard across half the camp as she collapsed to her knees with tears already falling from her eyes, whereas Joffrey looked ready to murder. "They'll die for this. I will wipe out House Stark till the last man and all those who support them," threatened Joffrey with a vicious snarl which only made him look even more unstable in Kevan's eyes. A tight slap to the face made the boy king whirl in shock and collapse pathetically, even bringing Cersei out of her broken despair as she looked at her father in shock for conducting such an action. "Your stupidity and cowardice costed us a capital, the loss of our only remaining valuable Stark hostage and the death of my sons," whispered Tywine icily, displaying a rage Kevan had never before seen from his ever-collected elder brother. "Father," pleaded Cersei, only to receive an equally hateful look full of scorn and disgust which made her recoil. "You are no daughter of mine. There is no doubt your son is a fool, but you are not only a fool but an incompetent queen who couldn't hold on to one stupid girl in your own keep. The Starks executed my son and heir, but Jaime's blood lies upon the hands of the two of you, said Tywine coldly. The ever-proud Cersei Lannister, known for her boldness, was rendered silent upon that damning remark as she lowered her gaze upon realizing the gravity of losing Sansa Stark. Joffrey got up in a black rage and opened his mouth to speak, only to receive another tight slap on his face which made him crash again to the ground in another pathetic display. Not another word if you wish to remain king, boy. Out, both of you, ordered Tywine mercilessly, promising an unsaid cruel fate if he was disobeyed, making Kevan help Cersei get up on her feet, who then silently went towards her son to help him. She looked at her father to say something, but Tywine's cold glare made her stop before dragging a stunned Joffrey out of the tent, leaving Kevan alone with his brother. My sons are gone. First Tyrion and now Jaime, stated Tywine, as he slowly sat back in his chair, making Kevan arrive by his side but still maintain a respectful distance. Nobody could have predicted such a drastic step. Arya Stark's death was the trigger that led to this retribution, replied Kevan somberly. They have threatened to destroy our house and my legacy forever. My sons are gone, but as long as I remain, House Lannister is not. The Starks will pay for this grave mistake in blood, swore Tywine silently. Kevan nodded loyally and stepped in front of his brother's view. Command us, brother. And we shall make them pay, promised Kevan, feeling bitter himself, for the enemy had two of his own sons captive, and if Jaime's fate was any indication, they were as good as lost, even if Kevan dearly wished it not to be so. Robb Stark and this Jon Snow will now march into the Westerlands. I am surrounded by incompetent fools mostly. Cersei, my grandsons, Stafford, Mace Tyrell, the names go on. The Starks on the other hand have gifted commanders in their ranks. With Stafford's host now destroyed and the Golden Tooth captured, they will move into the Westerlands to destroy our bannermen by taking their castles and families hostage. It is an obvious target, but knowing what we have seen from Robb Stark, however, that would not be his only goal. He will march into the Reach as well, declared Tywine seriously. Won't that extend his forces too thin? Asked Kevan hesitantly, but Tywine shook his head. The Reach not only makes up the bulk of our army but also ensures vital supplies that feed this army. If our logistics are destroyed, we will not be able to maintain our full strength for long. Robb Stark knows this, and the boy will make all efforts to destroy it, if not taking Highgarden itself. He has made his intentions towards the Reach and its nobility quite clear if they continue supporting our house and the crown. He is a skilled military commander who understands war if nothing else, explained Tywine curtly. Then we must stop him. Yes, we must. But we cannot leave the capital in Stannis' hands and march back to save the Reach or the West. It would only make us look even more weak. This declaration will rankle our allies. Alongside the news of Jaime's execution, the Starks have made their intent very clear with that. The Reach still has 15,000 reserves that their lords left to protect their lands. I will order Mace Tyrell to assemble those forces at Highgarden and send Randyll Tarly along with 20,000 men as reinforcements. Together they will drive out the Starks from the Reach before they inflict catastrophic losses upon our allies. Kevan, you must take command of another 20,000 men to retake Harrenhal and march into the Riverlands before the Tullys and Starks fortify their defences and hold significantly over the territory. The remaining 30,000 of our men will remain here with me to retake King's Landing and finish Stannis once and for all. Once I have put the crown back into our house's hand and secured the capital, I will march to your aid, and together with the Reach we will track the Stark armies in the Westerlands. Randyll Tarly will lead his forces from the Reach while you and I march through the Riverlands by destroying the Tullys to finally surround Robb Stark from both sides. Then the boy and his bastard brother alongside their supporters will know the true cost of their folly, said Tywine with cold rage present in his determined voice. It is a good plan, my lord. Our men and lords will need to see swift action to not lose faith. This will be the answer, agreed Kevan, earning a nod from his elder brother. Who executed Jaime? Kevan flinched when he saw nothing but absolute vengeance burning in Tywine's hardened gaze as he demanded an answer. Robb Stark gave the order, but from most reports that are coming in it was the White Wolf Jon Snow who carried out the execution in front of their entire army with their ancestral sword ice, answered Kevan. Cersei and her son's stupidity has costed us dearly time and again. The weak fools executed Eddard Stark and flamed this war further, lost both the Stark girls from their custody, dismissed Sir Barristan, paving the way for him to join up with the Starks and delivering Stark's ancestral Valyrian sword ice. If those two idiots weren't my blood, whispered Tywine bitterly. My lord, once you take the capital from Stannis, if possible, I suggest we look at returning Eddard Stark's bones alongside any from his retinue in exchange for Jaime's bones. He deserves to rest among our ancestors at Casterly Rock, suggested Kevan sadly. Tywine clenched his fist shut so tightly that Kevan feared his brother would draw blood. Very well. We will bury Jaime and Tyrion together at Casterly Rock once we crush the Starks, agreed Tywine reluctantly, and saw a look of surprise on his brother's face which made the old lion sigh. For all his faults, Tyrion was a Lannister and he died defending our house and my legacy from Stannis. As did Jaime. I could not save either of my sons, but I will ensure they rest side by side, for I know they cared about each other, explained Tywine. I am sorry, Tywine replied Kevan sadly. Leave me. Kevan bowed respectfully upon hearing that command and started marching towards the exit, knowing his brother would grieve for his lost sons in private, but would emerge soon as a vengeful lion demanding blood of everyone from House Stark and their allies. Iron Islands. Asha Greyjoy couldn't stop the bitter scowl from vanishing off her face even as her father angrily marched in front of her. The news they had received had thrown the Lord of Iron Islands in a black rage. This cannot go unanswered, father, pointed Asha seriously, making Balon glare at her. It won't. The Starks sent my last son and your only surviving brother on a suicide mission and got him killed. To save Sansa Stark, they shed our house's blood, replied Balon fiercely. Command us and we will avenge Theon. The Starks will pay for this dearly, swore Asha, making Balon scoff. Theon was dead to us the moment they stole him from us all those years ago. I wanted you to launch an invasion across the north much sooner, but your compassion for your brother's fate made you beg me to only carry out minor raids to test the north's defenses. All good that did, as your brother still died, scolded Balon harshly. Asha had the grace to look away and clench her fists bitterly upon being reminded of that fact. Now the North has used that precious waste of time on our part to position thousands of additional forces across almost every major stronghold through which we would have launched an invasion to seize their lands. How will you counter that? Demanded Balon mockingly. The new self-proclaimed king of the Iron Islands was not expecting his daughter and last heir to fiercely march towards the map of the Seven Kingdoms placed upon his desk. Latest reports indicate that Robb Stark and his armies will soon march into the Westerlands. I was never much in favor of seizing the north, it's a wasteland and complete shithole. Our men are of the sea, let us use that strength to raid and pillage the Westerlands as is our way, and whenever we get a chance, we will hit Robb Stark's armies in those lands at the right time, weakening them further. Once the Lannisters and Reachmen arrive for vengeance against him, let them battle each other. Whoever survives, their armies will be exhausted and we will destroy whoever is left to secure our independence, proposed Asha with determination. I want the north, Asha. The Starks have mocked me and our house for far too long, we will take their lands. That will trap Robb Stark in his armies in the south to be destroyed by the Lannisters and the Tyrells, opposed Balon with equal fierceness in his eyes. But how will you face the Vale cavalry? They march with Robb Stark. One good charge from those heavy horsemen and knights will be enough to butcher our men in an open land battle. As for the Westerlands, we have raided a decent portion of loot and slaves already. I want the north, demanded Balon. How do you think our men will fare better fighting in the frozen north? They hardly have anything much worth looting in that wasteland, cried Asha in disbelief. They can give me vengeance. That is your king's desire. I desire vengeance as much as you, father. You want the Northern Kingdom and I want its king's head, demanded Asha bitterly. Allow me to offer you both. Asha and Balon both froze upon hearing that voice and turned back to see Victorian Greyjoy fiercely holding a man from entering the Lord's Solar. A face they had not seen in many years. I return to your service, my king, said Euron with a devilish grin. You dare show your face here again, Euron? Asked Balon furiously, which only earned a smile from his brother. I was elated upon hearing you naming yourself as king of the Iron Islands. Now that our people are returning to the old ways once again, I wish to aid my family and house, said Euron with a wicked smile. We don't need your help. Now begone from my sight or I'll take your head, warned Balon. At least hear my idea, brother. If you don't like it, I shall leave. That is if you wish to avoid what happened to us the last time we rebelled against Westeros, hinted Euron. You dare? How would you offer us vengeance against the North and Robb Stark at the same time? Asked Asha hesitantly, much to Balon and Victorian's shock and displeasure. But it was the moment Euron was waiting for and grinned menacingly. Why waste precious Ironborn lives from the start to capture the north when we can soften their defenses by throwing their archenemies upon them, hinted Euron. Enough games, Euron. Speak plainly or I'll throw you out, warned Victarion, and squeezed his brother's frame harshly, but it only made the madman smile even wider. A massive wildling army has assembled beyond the wall with the intention of marching into the north by crossing the wall. The savages may fail in taking the wall, but with our fleet we can ferry those bastards through the Bay of Ice to land first upon Bear Island to establish a foothold in the north. From there, we unleash those barbarians against the Stony Shore, Deepwood Motte, Flint's Finger and Moat Cailin. Most of them will be slaughtered, but in doing so would considerably weaken the number of northern defenders. These men will be the North's last standing strength, with most of their men down south with Robb Stark. Then we invade with our forces, crushing what's left of the wildlings and Northmen to take their kingdom, explained Euron with a fanatic grin upon his blue lips. He was very pleased when all the Greyjoys looked stunned upon hearing that suggestion. "You're mad," whispered Victarion in disbelief. "You think the wildlings will ally with us?" asked Balon with a scoff. "They want to get south of the wall. We offer them our ships to ferry them safely without destroying their army against the wall and the Night's Watch. Some more incentives and they will fall to our trap," said Euron confidently. "What of Robb Stark?" "He won't sit idly by while we do this, if it's even possible," denied Asher. "That is where you come in, Daenerys. You will continue harassing the Starks in the Westerlands where they are marching. Hit and run strikes to slow their campaign, making them believe we are focusing most of our strength in the west, even deploy thousands of our men in those lands to give that illusion, while the majority of the Iron Fleet goes north to bring the wildlings to raid the north," suggested Euron. "Do you think me a fool who shall give you the Iron Fleet for such purpose, as mad as it is?" scoffed Balon. "I never asked for it, brother. Give that honor to Victarion if you wish, but let me talk to the wildlings, as this is my idea. If they decline and take my head, you won't lose much and can do whatever you please after that," explained Euron with a shrug. "What are you playing at with these mind games, Euron? You have no regard for family. Your past actions are proof of that," said Balon with a narrowed gaze full of suspicion, earning a cold and merciless glare from the crow's eye which made the rest of the Greyjoys shiver. "What I've always cherished: raiding and chaos. Will you let me honor the old ways and make our enemies fear the name Greyjoy once again?" Winterfell. Bran had tears falling from his eyes as he sat alone in his chair near the Godswood in Winterfell. Their family had just received a raven with great and terrible news at the same time. His brothers were achieving great victories in the south, but they were still losing the war in a way. A sister saved and another lost forever. He was truly happy upon hearing Sansa had been rescued from King's Landing with the help and sacrifice given by Theon and many good men, the likes of Lucas Blackwood, whose father Lord Blackwood had just arrived at Winterfell to protect it and received the grave news. Catelyn had been overjoyed upon hearing of Sansa's rescue, while Bran had been saddened upon learning Theon had died for them. But it was the new information in Robb's latest letter that crushed all of their hearts. Arya was gone. Tortured and killed by the Lannisters. He clenched his fists angrily and bit back a sob. Arya and him had always been close. They often teased and played with each other, with him wanting to become a knight a long time ago, and her desire to not be a lady and be a warrior against all odds. The thought of her being killed in great pain by their enemies made him angrier than he ever had in life, even more so upon his father's death at the hands of Lannisters. Prince Brandon Stark, heir to the kingdoms of the North, Riverlands and the Vale. Where was he when his sister was butchered by their enemies? Stuck in a chair as a cripple while his sister died all alone. His mother was devastated and had wept inconsolably, only comforted by Bran and Rickon with the thought of Sansa coming back to them giving some small comfort. Rickon didn't understand why their family was dying one after another and was always angry. Robb was a king leading 3 kingdoms and Jon was now a respected commander in their armies, both doing their utmost to protect the rest of their family and avenge their fallen. Yet Bran couldn't even be with the men he had sent under Robb's direction to protect their northern vassals from the ever-growing Ironborn threat. Now, they had received another raven from the Night's Watch demanding additional reinforcements urgently, as a massive wildling attack on the wall was imminent. The hordes were getting closer and unless aided, the Night's Watch won't be able to stop them and the north would be overrun with savages. Bran felt helpless with every passing day. It was why he had arrived in the Godswood, to achieve some form of peace from the turmoil and grief plaguing his heart. He placed his hand upon the ancient weirwood tree and prayed to the old gods to grant him strength and courage, to take away the pain within his heart, to be brave as his brothers to defend the north from the enemies arriving at their doorstep. It was then he heard faint whispers all around him. "Winterfell is gone, Robb." Bran was shocked upon hearing Jon's familiar voice relaying such dreadful news, and a hitched breath from Robb. "Our family?" asked the Stark King worriedly. "Bran and Rickon are gone, your mother and Sansa are taken hostages. The last of our forces are retreating, but there is nowhere left to run in the north." Bran couldn't believe what he had just heard, him and Rickon dead. Mother and Sansa taken hostages, their armies on the brink of complete destruction. "We have won so many battles but lost this war, Jon. The enemy armies are coming and we are surrounded, Robb. Many of our bannermen have deserted and gone over to offer their surrender. Those that still remain loyal won't be able to stop the tide that will crash upon us soon." "It's really over, isn't it?" "It is," whispered Jon's voice sommely. "Then find a way to escape north. I'll spare what men I can to aid your escape, Jon. You are our king. Without you, our cause is forever lost. I cannot escape, not now. It's too late, but as long as you live there is hope for my mother, Sansa and House Stark. I shall stand, fight and die. You know there is no way we can escape the encirclement we face, Robb. I shall die with you here. Jon. You can't. Our enemies have overrun the north. Hardly any men are left from those vassals that support us. I am just one man and can't retake Winterfell without any support on my own. Our armies and bannermen are gone. If I am to die, then let me die by your side. But it's over, Robb. Now let us meet our fate together as the last wolves of the north." Bran was horrified upon hearing what he had, and tears fell from his eyes when he finally saw a haggard and diminished army led by his eldest brothers near the lands of Casterly Rock. They barely had a small fraction of their original strength left and were surrounded on all sides by banners of Lannisters and Tyrell forces. Grey Wind and Ghost stood loyally by their side, as did Nymeria Arya's direwolf, much to Bran's shock. He watched his brothers fight a doomed battle with fearless bravery that made his heart twist in the most painful ways. Grey Wind died first, protecting Robb from a host of spearmen intent upon slaying the Stark King. Robb's cry of despair made Bran's heart fill with rage, but it was nothing compared to the sight of Jon and Ghost being skewered down by a storm of arrows as they tried to shield Robb as their army died around them. He saw Robb crying as Jon died with a smile in his arms, making Nymeria howl inconsolably. The flags and banners of House Stark burned all over the blood-stained battlefield as a broken King Robb Stark stood up again with nothing but absolute hatred burning in his and Nymeria's eyes. The Wolf King fought with nothing but vengeance in his heart and cut down many men, but was finally surrounded and cut down by the combined might of several Lannister men. Nymeria was the last member of House Stark left and watched helplessly as one by one their allies were put to the sword. Gratian, Mage Mormont, Daisy Mormont, Smalljon, so many more. With a vengeful howl, the she-wolf madly charged towards the satisfied form of a man that resembled Tywin Lannister, only to be cut down in a hail of arrows mercilessly. Bran cried out in agony as he watched Nymeria's eyes look at him sadly one last time before closing forever. He screamed and screamed as both his brothers' heads were sliced off mercilessly, as were their wolves. In a moment that he would never forget, the enemies strapped his brothers' corpses to horses and mounted their dead wolves' heads upon their bodies barbarically to parade them across the field, even as the Lannister men hacked Nymeria to pieces. "Make it stop!" he cried helplessly. "Please make it stop," he wished to all the gods desperately. But it was not to be, as he felt a bone-chilling cold envelop his entire body and found himself now standing in the north, with the wall's large figure visible way down south. His heart stopped when he saw an army of dead led by the White Walkers victoriously marching towards the wall as the world of men killed itself in their infighting. The vision came to its final piece when he saw the White Walkers parting respectfully to allow a dreadful being of ice to walk forward. The creature's eyes burned with a malice that made Bran want to run far away, and the cold look upon its face as it looked at the wall made him tremble. He awoke with a gasp and found himself back in the Godswood, and with Summer worriedly nudging him as the wolf tried to lick Bran's cheek full of tears. "You saw something truly awful, didn't you?" Bran looked to the side to see Uncle Benjen standing at a distance and looking at him sadly with a knowing look in his tired eyes. "How do you know?" he asked in a whisper. "When I was saved by the children of the forest from the White Walkers, They took me and my men to their last sanctuary. There I saw a vision of your father's death in King's Landing. I can never forget it. I am the last left of my generation of Starks, my father, Brandon, Lyanna, Eddard, they are all gone while I remain, confessed Benjen solemnly. I heard voices whispering of the North's conquest by its enemies, Winterfell taken with mother and Sansa hostage, while Rickon and I were dead. I saw Robb and Jon die in the south along with their direwolves and Arya's wolf Nymeria with my own eyes near Casterly Rock against the combined might of Lannisters and Tyrells. I saw the death of our family, our king and House Stark, confessed Bran miserably. Benjen came forward to envelop him in a comforting hug, making Bran cling to his uncle tightly. He didn't want to cry anymore after what he had seen, but couldn't help himself as the images were still so fresh in his heart. When they finally parted after several long moments, Bran looked at his uncle earnestly. "Is there any activity from the Ironborn?" asked Bran. "Not since we deployed sufficient reinforcements across the coast. No more raids have been reported," answered Benjen seriously. "And how grave is the threat from the wildlings?" Lord Commander Mormont seemed desperate for more men in his last letter, questioned Bran. "It's bad, Bran. The Night's Watch in its current state, in spite of receiving reinforcements, may not be able to stop them." "How desperate are the wildlings to cross the wall?" "Would they ally with the Ironborn?" asked Bran, making Benjen frown. "Unlikely, but not impossible. They are running from the White Walkers and their army of dead. The additional men and defenses we have set up along the coast will make it catastrophic for the Ironborn to raid without suffering great losses. But they have a fleet which can ferry the wildlings south. I doubt Balon would even think of allying with them, his pride would never allow it. I doubt they are even aware of the wildlings' intent to go past the wall," explained Benjen honestly. "And what do you think of the wildlings?" questioned Bran. "They call themselves the free folk who hate kneeling to anyone and spit at our customs and culture. They are following Mance Rayder as their king only because the White Walkers are after every one of them. The lords and people of the North hate them for the raids they have conducted in our lands for centuries. The Night's Watch hate them even more," revealed Benjen with a heavy frown. "Will they accept Robb as their king if we offer them a safe passage down south and try to find places for them to settle?" asked Bran curiously. "I'm not sure, Bran. You must understand the free folk are made up of various clans and tribesmen, each have different customs and hate our very guts. They call us kneelers for our system of kings and lords. A desperate few may accept Robb as their ruler if only to save their lives, but most would balk at the offer. They respect strength, and you are forgetting the northern lords would balk at even the mere thought of settling wildlings in their lands," warned Benjen. "We don't have enough men to keep the Ironborn at bay and fight the wildlings at the same time if it comes to it," pointed Bran frustratedly. "Not quite. Jon sent us 1,000 free men, we can muster another 1,000 from the northern forces we have mustered. If we combine the latest strength of the Night's Watch along with the Northmen you sent already to defend the wall, we can bring up our force up to a combined strength 3,000 to 4,000 men without reducing majority of our strength deployed on the coasts to deter the Ironborn and those stationed at Moat Cailin to send reinforcements should Robb and Jon need it," advised Benjen, as he stroked his beard thoughtfully. "How many men do the wildlings have?" asked Bran seriously. "Their host is more than 100,000 strong by now. But I reckon majority are non-combatants in the form of women, children and elderly. Their fighting force won't be more than 30,000 to 40,000, but they lack discipline, training and unity. Against a professional army, they would suffer many losses," answered Benjen. Bran paused as he thought about the vision of the White Walkers and the haunting being who led them coming down south towards the wall. If he placed himself in the wildlings' position, any alternative would be better than joining the army of the dead. Osha had said as much when Robb spared her life. Even if it involved launching a suicide attack to take the wall, or to ally themselves with anyone strong enough to help them get south and away from the dead that were following them relentlessly. "I understand there is great bad blood between our people, but eventually it will be a battle between the living and the dead. Uncle Benjen, you have seen the true enemy, and can you truly allow the wildlings to join that army? Won't that put us in even more danger?" asked Bran seriously. "I am brother of the Night's Watch, Bran. It is my duty to defend the realms of men from all threats beyond the wall, be they wildlings or the White Walkers. The wildlings are not our allies, nor will they accept us. Muster a force of 3,000 to 4,000 men like I recommend to defend the wall." "The Skagasi have not answered Robb's call yet," Nor did we pressure them considering they are so far away and our relations with them are fragile. But they hate the wildlings more, they will answer the Stark in Winterfell's call to fight them, explained Benjen confidently. How many men can the Skagasi provide us? And are you suggesting we strike the wildlings first before they attack the wall, or do anything worse like allying with our enemies if made an offer by them? 3,000 to 4,000 men is what Skagos can muster at most. But I must warn you, they will mostly not join the army defending the wall if a Stark isn't leading them. They won't follow me as I am member of the Night's Watch, they will only follow a true Stark to beat back their common foes, warned Benjen. Then we must consult Mother and Robb before taking any action in matters of the wildlings. If neither Robb or Jon can come to aid us with more men, then that leaves me as the Stark in Winterfell. I have not forgotten the children of the forest's offer of the potion that will help restore my legs. If I am whole again, I can at least represent our house even if I cede actual command to you and more experienced commanders in the field, said Bran with determination. Bran, I understand you feel helpless in your condition, but know this, that you shall die in a few years if you take that power to become whole again. After losing Arya, I don't think your mother or siblings would wish to lose you as well so soon, replied Benjen sadly. But I was in favor of allowing you to make a choice, but that was before Robb was made king of 3 kingdoms. You are not just the heir to Winterfell now, but a prince and next in line to the throne should anything happen to our king. The next in line after you is Rickon, and he cannot even take care of himself, much less any kingdoms right now. We need you with us, Bran. Now more than ever, urged Benjen sincerely. And the children of the forest. Can we truly ignore their offer to learn the true threat of the White Walkers and not prepare for them? That would be a mistake, countered Bran stubbornly. Consult your mother and write to Robb thereafter. This concerns not just the fate of his kingdoms or our family, but the world of men. Bran was not happy but could not help but remember his promise to Robb before his brother left for war. That he would be the Stark in Winterfell, look after their family and subjects, their lands. Robb had trusted him to do what was right as a Stark of Winterfell. It was only right he consulted his brother and king, no matter how much he wanted to otherwise. Very well, Uncle Benjen. I will do as you ask. Chapter 17. Invasion. Shadows moved through the dark forest like silent ghosts as they chased a fleeting scent they had caught onto. One lost so long ago, but still familiar to them. His ever-silent younger pack brother with blood-red eyes followed after him loyally. The albino-colored littermate of his, who was usually silent, now seemed quite unsettled. The larger of the wolves leading the charge whined softly in an effort to calm his littermate and achieved some success when the younger wolf howled back positively. Once they had been 6, with 5 of them whimpering blind in the snow beside their dead mother, sucking cool milk from her hard dead nipples while he crawled off alone. Now only 5 remained, and if they couldn't find their litter's last sister, then only 4. The white wolf whined sommely again, earning a furious but determined snarl from his older pack brother with smoky grey fur and fierce yellow eyes. They had already lost one sister in these lands long ago, the reminder of that loss making their tails drop sadly. They would not lose their last sister in these strange lands. It was with that feeling the white wolf followed after his eldest pack brother with even more speed as they both chased the familiar scent. Robb awoke with a silent gasp and blinked away the shadows from his eyes, only to catch sight of a naked girl lying next to him. Her long brown hair covered her back beautifully and her white skin reflected in the dim room of their chamber. It was his new wife. The memories of the wedding, the festivities alongside celebration of Lord Bolton's wedding to another Free, and the first night when he and Roslyn Free gave themselves to each other came rushing back, making him blush a little. All things considered, it had not been as horrible as he had imagined. Roslyn had been a sweet girl who had tried her best to strike conversation with him whenever they got a chance, which weren't many due to the festivities and all the lords coming to wish them well and offer gifts. She had also done her duty as his wife on their first night quite well, adding to his joy. When he didn't see Grey Wind in his room as was the usual norm or feel his wolf's presence nearby, the dream came back to him. So you're both out there searching for your sister, Grey Wind and Ghost. Robb wondered if Jon had been having the same dream like him and was determined to ask his brother about it in the morning, which would be arriving soon. A part of him felt sorry for the direwolves. They were searching for their last sister, but if Arya had truly walked into her, then Nymeria was also gone in a way like Arya had. He gently got up from the bed and walked towards the window to gaze outside the calm prevailing across Riverrun. Tomorrow he would be riding back to war just like his father had against the Mad King after marrying Rob's mother in this very castle. His mother had always said Rob had been conceived on that one fateful night, and the Stark King wondered if destiny would repeat itself. A lone tear slipped from his eye as he had never imagined to be married alone like this, without the presence of his entire family except Jon. "Your Grace." Rob blinked in surprise and saw Roslin arriving by his side, hesitantly making him quickly wipe away at his moist eyes, an action that didn't go unnoticed by his free wife. "Are you upset? Is it anything I did?" "No, my lady. Just remembering my family. I wish they had been here to see me getting married," confessed Rob hesitantly. Realization dawned upon Roslin as she remembered so many of her family had been present for their wedding, yet the only one from the king's family had been his half-brother, who had been quite kind and courteous to her. "I'm sorry, Your Grace," she consoled her new husband gently, making him smile. "Please call me Rob when we're alone. And it's not your fault, so don't be sorry. Father and Arya are gone, so are some of my good friends including Theon Greyjoy. My mother and younger brothers Bran and Rickon are holding the north for me. The only one to blame for all of it are the Lannisters and the war they started," explained Rob patiently. Roslin saw her husband again, getting lost in memories even as he recalled the names of those closest to him. In his silence, she saw the pain he carried for the first time and didn't know what made her step forward to place a comforting hand upon his shoulder, even as her other hand held the sheet protecting her modesty. Rob looked back at her in surprise once again, but she didn't back away. "I know our marriage was not something you would have desired, but I am here for you should you ever need me," she proposed truthfully. "Thank you, my lady. Call me Roslin when we're alone, Your Grace," she said with a faint teasing smile. Rob laughed heartily upon those words, which made him look much younger, and brought a smile upon her lips as well when the king nodded his consent at her request. He surprised her once again by taking her hand from his shoulder and holding it gently. "Thank you for supporting me," Roslin said Rob honestly. "My pleasure," she whispered shyly with a faint blush tinting her cheeks. They stayed like that in comfortable silence for a long time and watched the water flowing across Riverrun peacefully. "You're leaving for war today, aren't you?" she asked nervously. "I am," admitted Rob with a determined nod. "Will you take me with you?" asked Roslin, making Rob look at her sadly. "I'm afraid it won't be safe, Roslin. You're my queen and I wish to keep you safe, which is why I wish for you to remain here at Riverrun. Lord Edmure will ensure your safety until I settle this war for good." "I have already lost enough family for a lifetime," answered Rob frankly, but his tone was anything but kind. Roslin didn't look happy, but thankfully she didn't argue and merely gave a somber nod. "Will you write to me?" she asked after a long moment. "I promise," swore Rob, and saw it made her quite happy. "Can you tell me about my new family? It would help if I am to get to know them better," she requested. "Of course. You've already met my brother Jon. He's usually quite reserved and speaks less. But he is loyal." Roslin listened patiently as Rob talked more about the half-brother fighting by his side before moving on to his parents. There was genuine grief as well as guilt when he talked about them, and it was easy to see he loved and respected his father and mother dearly. The king's laugh was infectious when he talked about Bran and Rickon, and all the things they did, which made her laugh as well. The tales he told her about Sansa gave Roslin hope of finding a kindred spirit in Winterfell someday now that the princess was rescued. The only one he talked very less about was Arya, and Roslin didn't push for more as the heartbreak was still visible in Rob's eyes over his recently deceased younger sister. It was why she diverted him to questions about the North, its lords and lands, something for which Rob gave a thankful smile before answering. They didn't realize as time flew by and the first rays of the sun entered their room when the king finally stopped. Realization dawned upon them as it was time to attend to their duties, him as a king and Roslin as his new queen. The awkwardness between them had lessened greatly as they got ready, and she helped him don his armor and gave him his crown and sword, which he accepted with a grateful smile. Rob hesitated for a moment before coming forward and laying a deep kiss upon her lips, which she savored as much as she could before they had to part for good. They looked at each other for a long moment before Rob steeled himself and placed a comforting hand upon her cheek. "Till I return." Rob found his brother waiting for him in the courtyard alongside the rest of the lords and commanding officers. Lord Royce had already marched with the first wave containing 10,000 men from Harrenhal a few days ago. Lord Gilwood Hunter had taken another 10,000 yesterday, and the last 10,000 would be led by the king and his brother to carry out the invasion. "Had a good night, your grace," teased John with a smirk. "Actually I did," replied Rob with a smirk of his own, earning a round of chuckles from the lords and men nearby, including his brother. "Then let's get the hell out of here before your father-in-law rises demanding to break his fast with you," said John with a barely contained smile, and laughed more when Rob shivered and swiftly mounted upon his horse. As John and the rest of the lords and commanders mounted upon their horses, Rob looked upon Edmure Tully. "Hold the Riverlands for me, uncle. Push back any Lannister armies that try to seize it back from you. I'll leave reinforcements at the Golden Tooth, and Bran has left some 3,000 men at Moat Cailin who will come to your aid should you get pushed back by the Lannisters from our agreed defensive lines," instructed Rob. "Thank you for the consideration, your grace. But it won't be necessary. The Rivermen and Northmen will hold these lands for you to the death," promised Edmure boldly, earning boisterous cheers from the said soldiers and an appreciative nod in return from the king. As Rob trotted his horse forward, John arrived by his side upon his own mount. "The wolves?" asked John. "You know where they are if you had the same dream as me last night," whispered Rob, making John's eyes go wide for a moment. "We will talk about this later," instructed Rob, earning a firm nod in return from his brother. The Stark King looked back at Riverrun to see Roslin standing in the courtyard alongside Edmure and offering him a warm smile, one which he returned before marching out of the castle. The 10,000-strong force was waiting for them there, with the infantry having already gone ahead in the initial two waves under Lord Royce and Lord Hunter. Only the cavalry units remained from the kingdoms under him. Most were from the Vale, but there were also few scattered units of northern cavalry, as the Riverlands cavalry along with remaining northern horsemen had been deployed under Bryden Tully to defend these lands against the Lannisters. Jon Stark looked at his brother, who watched the assembled cavalry that would be accompanying them into battles from now on, especially into the Reach. The king looked satisfied as he unleashed his sword and raised it high in the air, followed by a fierce battle cry. "We march!" The fearsome battle cries of thousands followed Robb Stark as he rode out in force alongside his brother and supporters, making the ground tremble furiously as an army of horsemen charged after them to bring war and death to their enemies. They had made good progress after departing Riverrun and had nearly made it halfway through the route to reach Wayfarer's Rest. Another day or slightly more, and their cavalry force would be near the lands of the Golden Tooth. As night settled, their army made camp upon Robb's orders, as the king didn't want to run their horses ragged, knowing they needed to preserve their real strength to venture into the Reach soon, which would involve a long march. There was a lake nearby, and it was where Jon found his brother standing with a group of Stark guards maintaining a respectful distance but still near to come to their king's defense. They all bowed before him respectfully and greeted him, which made Jon smile, as many men had started doing the same after his victories and even more after he was legitimized. And he had to thank his brother for that, who had accepted him with open arms despite the truth of Jon's parentage. It was why Jon was shocked upon seeing Robb's eyes were moist and sadly staring at the lake ahead of them. "Brother?" asked Jon worriedly, making the king look at him hesitantly. "It's nothing. Just remembered all those we have lost. Father, Arya, Lady, Jory, all of our household men and women lost in King's Landing, my friends Theon, Lucas, Eddard and Torrhen Karstark, so many more faces flash before my eyes," confessed Robb in a whisper. Jon understood his brother's feelings as he remembered the loss of Arya, Sam and Robin Flint. Even the men who had followed him into battle. "We will lose many more before this war is over, Robb. But we have to keep moving forward and avenge them. For father, our friends and Arya," reminded Jon with a cold determination, as he remembered the horrible manner in which his dearest sister had been murdered. Robb paused and wondered if it was the right time to tell Jon the truth about their lost sister. "He deserves to know. You have been having wolf dreams more lately, haven't you?" "Like you were ghost running through the forest," said Robb carefully. "You had the same dream last night?" asked Jon hesitantly, earning a nod from Robb. "I think we are wargs, brother. Bonded to our wolves and can slip into their bodies. Greywind and Ghost are searching for Nymeria. But they will be disappointed if they found her somehow." Jon was quite surprised upon hearing what was said by the king, and his stern look demanded an explanation, making Robb sigh. "Before Arya died, she begged us to make the Lannisters pay for their crimes against our family." "But that was not her dying wish," confessed Robb, making Jon's eyes go wide in shock. "What was it, and why did you keep it from me for so long?" questioned Jon angrily, making Robb look away sadly. You were grieving and needed time, the same as I did. We achieved a part of our vengeance when you executed Jaime, but to accept the truth you had to grieve first, answered Robb, his gaze looking far into the skies. You aren't making sense, Robb. Speak plainly to me, said Jon impatiently. Arya was a warg like us. Her dying wish was for the two of us to find Nymeria, because while her body died, our sister's spirit warged into Nymeria and lives on in her. Robb watched a series of emotions appearing on his brother's face one after another. It started with shock, followed by disbelief, then anger, and finally ended in a desperate hope. Arya lives? Asked Jon. The joy in his brother's voice nearly crushed Robb's heart, but he had to be honest. It was why he told him all about the dream he had in the Weirwood in Harrenhal, of meeting Torrhen's Stark ghost, who truly unveiled this hidden truth to Robb, and all the wolf dreams he had been having more and more ever since. Jon was stunned as a few things started making sense as to why their wolves were so desperate and out there hunting for Nymeria. Jon, if this turns out to be true, then you must understand Arya will never be human again, said Robb gravely. He watched the harsh truth only made Jon clench his fists bitterly as a bloody storm raged within his eyes. I'll kill them all. Every one of those golden shits and the Tyrells who support those butchers, swore Jon murderously, earning a hard but determined look from Robb. We will make them pay dearly in blood, brother, promised Robb, as he placed his hand upon Jon's shoulder. Jon nodded and they settled into a long silence to stare at the lake in front of them. Neither realized how long they just stood there beside each other until Jon finally spoke. Arya always wanted to be free and not be a lady. She would have called you stupid and tried to murder you if she ever learned you promised her hand to a free of all people for a bridge, jested Jon with a smirk, making Robb shiver. If she truly lives in her direwolf now, she might just do it, whispered Robb with a defeated sigh. At that, Jon couldn't help but burst into a hilarious fit of laughs as he imagined a direwolf possessing Arya running after a fleeing Robb to bite his ass off. Seeing his brother laugh truly for the first time ever since he came south from the wall made the king laugh in joy as well. They continued laughing as they remembered all the pranks Arya had pulled upon the both of them in Winterfell so many times, all the shit they had to save her from, and all the trouble she landed them and their family in with her antics sometimes. We never should have left Winterfell, said Robb wistfully, making Jon pat his back in support. We'll go back there one day. As heroes we'll return to our home to reunite with our family after we have defeated all our enemies. Arya will be with us too, even if she is a direwolf and even if I have to drag her back there, swore Jon fiercely, but with a faint grin upon his lips. I would like that truly. Hearing you say it gives me hope, said Robb gratefully with a smile of his own. You have given me hope too, brother. Even it's faint, knowing that Arya is alive somehow even in her direwolf, it soothes the hole within me, admitted Jon sommely. He was surprised when Robb produced a wineskin and raised it high in the air. To Arya and father, toasted Robb calmly, as he took a large gulp before offering the wineskin to Jon, who took it without hesitation. To our fallen. May they never be forgotten. The next day, as the morning rays of the sun arrived in the skies and the army was rousing to break camp, they heard troubling reports from an advanced scout party that Robb had sent ahead. The king had summoned his brother and Harold Hardang, who was cousin to Robin Arryn and presumptive heir of House Arryn should Lysa's son die without an heir. Lysa had been quick to assign Harold to war, not that the young falcon as many called him had refused. He was one of the youngest commanders leading the Vale cavalry and stood beside Jon as Robb heard the scouts. There is disturbance around the lands of Wayfarer's Rest, Your Grace. A large group of bandits who were in hiding when our earlier army contingents passed have now started looting villages and settlements. Many small folk are fleeing the lands, with a good number of House Vance's strength crushed against Jaime Lannister earlier and their remaining men currently stationed with Lord Bryden Tully at Harrenhal in Riverland's defense. There is very little the Castellan of Wayfarer's Rest can do to help, reported the lead scout. A vigilante group calling themselves the Brotherhood Without Banners is trying to stop the bandits wherever possible, but there are too few of them to stop the bandits everywhere, said the second scout truthfully. Who leads this brotherhood? Asked Robb seriously. Many say Lord Beric Dondarrion, originally tasked by Lord Eddard Stark to bring the Mountain to justice and protect the small folk of the Riverlands from the Lannister raids. We do not know their current strength or quality of troops, but most small folk refugees who met us on the way said they are not enough to stop the bandits, answered the lead scout. Madness and stupidity. I will not allow these scum to do as they please in my kingdom. Before we march into the Westerlands, we must ensure these borderlands are secure and its people free from harassment and death," declared Robb furiously. "Command me, your grace. And I will bring you their heads," said Harold eagerly. "They are in our way. I will lead the attack myself, Lord Harold. My people will know their king stands with them in their hardships and will deliver justice to those that have wronged them," decided Robb icily. "We need to go into the Westerlands fast and from there into the Reach as per our plan, my king. This is a distraction. I am not saying we let this go unanswered. I know you care about the small folk and it is our duty to help them, honor demands it. Let Lord Harold take command of a company to bring these bandits to justice while we reach the Golden Tooth. He can join us there once he has brought peace to these lands," suggested Jon calmly, earning a grateful nod from the Vale Knight. Robb clenched his fist and looked extremely reluctant to the option being recommended by his brother. "I wish to help my people. They have already suffered more than enough at the hands of Lannisters. These bandits are in the way of us reaching the Westerlands. I understand where you are coming from, Jon. The Lords of Riverlands may have declared for me, but it must be me who helps its people. Certainly when the problem is right in front of me. My decision stands," said Robb unflinchingly, his look reminding Jon of Eddard Stark when the Lord had made up his mind on any matter. Jon wanted to argue against the decision, but the look in Robb's eyes was enough to show he would not change his decision. "Then we will ride with you to bring this problem to a quick end, my king," replied Jon finally, earning a nod from Lord Harold as well. "Good. Ready the men as per this plan of mine," ordered Robb with an appreciative nod. Contrary to his expectations, Jon had been surprised when Robb had not immediately dispersed their mighty cavalry host across multiple villages to stop the bandit raids. Instead, the king had asked majority of their forces to remain in camp and only taken command of some 700 horsemen to accompany him. Their scouts had been ordered to secretly shadow the bandits as they retreated with their loot and slaves in the form of small folk women to their hideout within the forest. They had fallen for the illusion Robb had created and made them believe the king had not yet moved with his force, and they were free to take away their loot and disappear into the forests. It would be their last mistake, as Jon found himself beside the king whose 700-strong force surrounded the camp from all directions at a distance. It was the first time Jon found himself in battle directly under Robb's leadership, and as he looked at his brother alongside the planning that was executed, he saw glimpses of the hero of the Whispering Wood and liberator of Riverrun come alive once again. For all his faults and shortcomings, Robb was good at war like their shared childhood hero Daeron the Young Dragon. As the wolf's hour fell and darkness descended upon the forest with only a faint moonlight in the sky, the Stark King raised his ancestral sword, ice marking the beginning of the attack. "Take no prisoners among the bandits. I want their heads on spike by sunrise." "Save their prisoners," commanded the king. War horns blew from every direction as 700 cavalry readied themselves to bring ruin upon the mid-sized and lightly barricaded bandit camp. Most of their force was made up of Valumen, but Jon also found himself leading some northern cavalry units who had volunteered to serve under him. The northerners knew their king after having fought by his side in great battles of past, but the Valumen would be seeing it for the first time. Jon didn't miss the brief surprise followed by admiration when Robb actually came through upon his promise of fighting beside them in every battle. Lord Harold was quite shocked upon seeing King Robb not hesitating for a moment as he led the charge of their main contingent by being the first to gallop his horse forward. "Charge!" roared the Stark King, pointing ice forward at their enemy's camp. Jon and the northerners couldn't help but swell with pride upon that sight and roared as one. The king in the north. The Knights of the Vale roared back with even more ferocity, with cries of the Wolf King as they followed after their monarch loyally. It was in that moment Jon realized Robb's hidden intention apart from helping the small folk. His brother wanted these Valumen to see him come through upon his words, to see him not be afraid in the face of battle and lead the charge as he had promised when he asked their support. It was a risky gamble, but if he was to take these men into dangerous campaigns, especially into the Reach, then he had to earn their true loyalty before. What better way than in the fire of battle, seeing their king fight with bravery, cunning and determination to inspire loyalty before they faced formidable enemy forces of the Lannisters and Reachmen. Jon unleashed Longclaw and rode beside his brother with a mad grin upon his lips, one matched by Robb as the king looked at him. "Let's fight our battles together from tonight, Lord Jon Stark," teased Robb. It was all they had dreamed of as boys, with Jon wanting nothing more than be recognized as a Stark instead of a bastard, alongside Robb and him fighting side by side in glorious battles as true brothers. "It would be an honor, brother," replied Jon with a true smile. Together the eldest sons of Eddard Stark smashed through the barely armored bandit sentries, with their Valyrian swords staining themselves red with their enemy's blood. They crushed a small group of men underneath their horses as they got up from their sleep and stumbled out of their tents upon hearing the attack. Their cavalry was attacking from all directions and easily steamrolled over the ill-prepared bandit forces. Robb and Jon were grinning as they entrenched themselves into the thick of battle, often calling out their enemy kills as a harmless jest to each other, and kept up their spirits in battle. Their glory didn't last long when their overwhelming force made quick work of the bandit forces, who were in no position to face a surprise attack in the thick of night from the heavy horsemen of the Vale and North. By the time it was over, Robb and Jon were covered in blood, guts and dirt, but couldn't help but seem satisfied when they watched their men free the grateful small folk who were stunned to see their new king had came in person to their aid. They fell to their knees before Robb and thanked him profusely alongside his men, earning a thunderous cheering from their cavalry forces. The king quickly commanded the wounded among the small folk to be tended to and even distributed enough provisions to let the small folk return back to their homes to resume their lives once again. The fact that the king's force had suffered no casualties except for 3 men with minor wounds was a blessing which all of them were thankful for. In the grand scheme of this war, this was not even a noteworthy encounter. But Jon watched the elevated morale among their forces and was sure the tale of this encounter would soon spread among the Valymen like wildfire. "This felt good," Robb said Jon honestly, as he watched the smiles upon the faces of the small folk. "We needed a victory, no matter how inconsequential. For what is to come, and our people needed us to answer their call," answered Robb truthfully, making Jon give a firm nod in return. Few hours later they returned in triumph to their army camp, where news of their success lifted the spirits of their main force and brought smiles upon the faces of thousands of men, especially the Vale Knights who approved their king's decisive action. The cheering quieted down after several long moments only when King Robb Stark stepped before his men mounted on his horse and with a blood-stained ice in his hand. His words were simple. "Ride with me and face our enemies." Jon had led men into battle and won his own victories, but there was something in the way his brother led them in war that tugged at his heart immensely. Made him feel nearly invincible, no matter the odds against them. The same feeling arrived in the eyes of nearly every man in the army as they roared for their king and mounted upon their horses as Jon arrived by his brother's side upon his own horse. Robb grasped ice more tightly in his hands as he watched his cavalry army forming up in a disciplined formation under the command of its officers. He looked at his brother standing loyally by his side. "We'll ride into hell with you, my king," said Jon fiercely. Robb looked at the road ahead, knowing miles away lay the heart of their enemy's country, ones who had brought nothing but pain and misery upon his family and people. He remembered the last moments shared with Arya, which hardened his heart even further. "For Arya," whispered Robb with vengeance in his eyes. "Our sister," agreed Jon with equal cold fury. After another day's hard ride, they were approaching the borders of the Westerlands and had camped for the night. While their men and horses rested, the Stark brothers were wide awake. "Do you feel it, Robb?" asked Jon, as they waited near the edge of the forest. "Grey Wind and Ghost are close. I can't explain why, but I feel it in my bones." "I also feel another presence with them," confessed Robb calmly. "Nymeria?" asked Jon with hope in his voice. "Only one way to find out." Jon understood what his brother meant and closed his eyes to imagine Ghost's face. The albino wolf was silent as ever, but soon Jon realized the dire wolf was also content when he finally found himself in the wolf's body. He stood beside his eldest packmate brother, who stood tall and imposing as they both faced a vicious pack of wolves led by another large and fierce direwolf. Grey Wind didn't flinch when Nymeria emerged from the shadows and looked at her packmate brothers. Ghost watched in silence as his 2 packmates looked a little similar, and Nymeria had grown larger in size, even more than him. But not as large or imposing as Grey Wind, whose mere presence made most of the wolf pack gathered around Nymeria to whine in fear. Nymeria just looked at her packmate brothers for a long moment before a soft whine escaped from her mouth, and for a moment Ghost saw her eyes looked the same as her 2 leggers who had sadly died not long ago. It made him whine in joy and sadness, which was all it took for Nymeria to rush towards Ghost and for him to do the same. They crashed into each other and started patting each other happily with their paws and licked each other affectionately, all the while Grey Wind watched in silence and stood as an impregnable barrier between his younger packmates and the rest of the wild wolf pack. Some of the smaller wolves from the pack growled and Grey Wind roared right back at them, which was the final straw as they all whined in fear and sat down on all fours accepting his dominance. Only when the pack was subdued, Grey Wind turned towards his littermates and approached towards Ghost and Nymeria, making both direwolves rush towards him happily. They played and licked each other happily, and as their heads touched each other in unison something unexpected happened. Jon felt a jolt pass through him as if struck by lightning and found himself in a white plain. He saw Robb was right beside him, and before he could ask his brother what was happening they heard a sniffle from behind and turned swiftly. And they found her there. Jon's eyes teared up as he saw his lost sister standing before them. Her hair was shorter than what he had last seen, but it was definitely her. "We found you, little sister," whispered Jon in a joyous voice, making her smile. "I'm right here," she whispered happily with tears in her eyes. The vision came to an end abruptly and Jon found himself back in Ghost looking at Nymeria as she licked at his wolf's face affectionately. Grey Wind nuzzled his packmate sister's side affectionately, making her whine happily and return the gesture. The turmoil in Jon's heart grew too strong and he found himself pushed out of his wolf and returned to his human form. He found Robb had also returned to his own body and was looking at him happily. "She lives, our sister lives," whispered Jon in disbelief and sheer joy. "Grey Wind and Ghost will bring her back to us. The pack will be united again," promised Robb. "I want nothing more." "Did you see the real Arya like I did, if only for a brief moment?" asked Jon earnestly, making his brother nod happily. "It was when our wolves touched their heads. Perhaps Arya initiated the contact. We need to get better at watching if we hope to see her again, if only for brief moments," suggested Robb, and saw a terrifying determination arrive in Jon's eyes. "Then we shall make it happen." It wasn't a statement but a promise, one which Robb agreed with wholeheartedly. Lord Harold Hardyng and the cavalry force had made good progress the next day in reaching the Westerland's borders under the leadership of their king and Jon Stark. The men were highly motivated and there was an aura of invincibility in the air. He had his reservations before about the abilities of the king and his brother, having only heard tales of their victories in recent past but not seen them in action with his own eyes. Now he had, as did all the Valymen in their force, either through fighting by their side or hearing first-hand reports from their fellow countrymen. King Robb Stark was all their Vale Lords had promised: brave, cunning and charismatic. Jon Stark was a talented swordsman and a loyal commander who had also proven himself. The White Wolf had lived up to his ever-growing reputation equally. Many in their force, especially the ones who had fought alongside their king against the bandit force, had started referring him as the Gale Wolf for his unexpected and blinding fast assaults upon enemy forces that left nothing but destruction upon their foes. The king had been quite pleased, as the name was far better than the Young Wolf, which was a title given to him when he was still a novice commander who had just won his first victory, or even the Wolf King, which didn't suit much as their king ruled over men. They were all even further shocked when 3 direwolves had met them on their route alongside a pack of wild wolves. The largest had been the king's own battle partner Grey Wind, whom many of the Valymen had seen in their homeland when Robb came to them requesting for aid. Accompanying him was Jon Stark's direwolf Ghost. The last and newest direwolf was an unknown to all Valymen. Thankfully the few Northmen among their ranks had remarked it was the direwolf Nymeria of their lost princess Arya Stark. What was even more intriguing was the pack of wild wolves that followed after her deferentially. The 3 direwolves looked at the Stark brothers for a long moment and shocked the army even more when they lowered their heads, which made the rest of the wild wolves get down on all fours. It was a sight which neither Harold or the rest of their army would ever forget, as their king marched forward alongside his brother to pet their direwolves affectionately before the dangerous beasts which would tear any man apart assumed protective positions around the Stark brothers, making the rest of the pack do the same. Robb turned back to look at Lord Harold and the rest of their men, who were speechless upon seeing what they had just now. Advance. Golden Tooth. A large camp had been set up beneath the castle of the Golden Tooth as more and more Stark forces arrived into the Westerlands. The first wave, consisting of 10,000 infantry led by Lord Royce, followed by a second wave of equal numbers led by Lord Hunter. They had made a tough forced march to reach here swiftly, and Sir Barristan alongside the rest of the commanders of the strike force led by Jon Snow, who had conquered this castle and destroyed Stafford Lannister's army, had made all possible efforts to help their new allies assemble their camp and get some much needed rest. Now they awaited the arrival of their king with the last of their reinforcements, the infamous Vale cavalry. They weren't kept waiting longer than 2 days, as their scouts reported their king's arrival, which was why Sir Barristan found himself alongside all the lords under their faction standing at their army base's entrance. The ground trembled with the familiar movement of thousands of horses at once, but it was the emergence of 3 fearsome direwolves leading a pack of wild wolves first that stunned them all. The beasts were galloping forward fearlessly towards their camp, making many of their men raise their weapons nervously. Only Lord Umber's stern command made them stand down, and just in time as they saw their king arrive alongside their cavalry behind the wolves. A mad grin arrived upon Lord Umber's lips as his voice echoed across nearly the entire camp and every man's very soul. The king has arrived. It was the first time Sir Barristan had seen Robb Stark after King Robert's last visit at Winterfell. As the young Stark ruler came near them, the veteran knight saw the young boy's face had hardened due to war. His eyes had lost his boyish innocence and were now reflecting those of a commander who had led men to victory and killed men. He was equally pleased to see Jon beside the king, healthy and strong, unlike the distraught boy who had rushed earlier to the Riverlands upon hearing of his sister's situation. All the lords knelt when the king arrived before them, making the men behind them in the camp do the same. "Rise, my lords and soldiers, we have a war to execute," commanded Robb with a smile. Without wasting any time, the king had called his war council, making all the lords report to the freshly set up command tent within a few minutes. He spent the first few minutes greeting all his noble supporters, with the most informal being a monstrous bear hug bestowed upon Lord Umber, earning a hearty laugh. Watching the king interact with his men made Barristan somber, as he was reminded of Rhaegar Targaryen for a moment. He watched Jon interact with the lords who had accompanied in his strike force with equal vigor and happiness, while also making introductions with many Vale lords he had never met before with Robb's help. Barristan was quite shocked upon learning, as had many others, that Jon was no longer a Snow, but a legitimized Stark. If there was any lingering doubt in Barristan's heart about Robb Stark, then it vanished with this last act. None could dare deny Robb Stark's talent at war or charisma, it was right there for all to see. But his act of rewarding and trusting his brother with all his heart made Barristan understand with certainty that the king was a good man. The veteran knight trusted Jon's judgment and character after all they had been through together, and the way the lad looked at his king and brother was all the confirmation Barristan needed. It was why the old knight bowed deeply before the king when he formally stepped before him in the tent. "It is an honor to meet you, your grace," said Barristan respectfully, and was surprised when Robb grasped his shoulders firmly and made him rise up. There was a smile upon the king's face and the respect that no Lannister had ever given him before. "The honor is mine, Sir Barristan. My brother Jon has told me of all you have done to aid our family and cause. If not for you, I wouldn't have my ancestral sword or my father's last words. You helped Jon achieve the conquest of the Golden Tooth and defeating Stafford's reserve army." "I am in your debt," replied Robb gratefully. "I couldn't protect your lord father due to being bound by oath as the King's Guard commander. All I have done ever since is to make up for that mistake," your grace answered Barristan solemnly. "And you have, sir. I have nothing but respect and gratitude for you," praised Robb honestly. "Sir Barristan wishes to serve you as King's Guard, your grace," revealed Jon, and earned a hopeful nod from the old knight. The rest of the lords looked quite curious to the development and were watching their king's reply. Robb looked at the veteran for a long moment, and to the older knight's credit, he didn't look away and met his gaze with strength and conviction. "It is true, your grace. In my final years, I wish to serve a good king," said Barristan sincerely. "I can't find anyone more worthy for such an important role in the Seven Kingdoms, even if I tried. I want you to not serve but lead my Kingsguard, Sir Barristan. Help me eventually build up this ancient and noble order with good and brave men like you." "Will you accept?" asked Robb with a smile. "I would humbly accept this honor, your grace," said Barristan happily, earning a smile from Jon. All the lords watched the spectacle with a keen eye as Sir Barristan Selmy knelt before their king and laid his sword before the king's feet. Jon was smiling widely as the veteran knight swore his vows, earning a solemn promise from the king in return with absolute conviction present in both of their eyes. Many were even more surprised when Robb helped his new Kingsguard commander rise back up on his feet and concluded the ceremony as Sir Barristan now took up his rightful position by the side of his king and gave a grateful nod to Jon and many of the northern lords like Lady Mage, Lord Umber among others who cheered for him. With that, Robb stepped before the war table where their aides had already set up a detailed map of the Seven Kingdoms. Now that we are here with our entire force, I will reveal our plan of action. The Tullys under Sir Bryden and Lord Edmure will hold the Riverlands for us with 20,000 men we have left behind. My brother Bran will hold the north with nearly 16,000 men in total. With those areas secure for now and the Vale closed off, we can focus upon our main enemies. Lord Rickard Karstark and the Vale Navy has been successful in rescuing my sister. Now they are laying siege to Dragonstone to end Stannis' hold on his seat now that he is trapped in King's Landing trying to keep out Lannister and Tyrell forces, announced Robb, surmising most of the key developments that had happened for the benefit of everyone in the tent. With the fall of the Golden Tooth and destruction of Stafford's host, there is virtually no army left in the Westerlands to oppose us. The seats of Lannisport, Cricker Hall, Sarsfield, Deepden and Ashmark are poorly defended after most of their men died when Stafford lost his army and the remaining currently fighting alongside Tywin Lannister, reported Jon. That was a brilliant victory. Lord Jon Stark and his strike force have my gratitude for their service, declared Robb proudly, making almost every one of the strike force lords grin happily. But there is plenty still left to be done. Lord Bolton, the Lord of Dreadfort, stepped forward upon being called by the king as many eyes turned to him in surprise. Take 3,000 men to capture Sarsfield with all haste. I trust you can handle this task, commanded Robb, earning a nod from Roose swiftly. It shall be done, your grace. Thank you for the honor, answered Roose respectfully, earning a firm nod from the king. Lord Gilewood Hunter, the head of House Hunter of Longbow Hall, saluted the king and knelt before him. You shall capture Hornval with 4,000 men and bring House Brax to heel. Jon watched the young Lord Hunter assure his commitment to this task as one by one Robb called out various notable commanders from across his kingdoms for the tasks he had in mind. Lord Harold Hardang to capture the Crag with 2,000 men. Lord Mallister to seize Ashmark with 3,000 men. Lord Royce will be divisional commander in the Westerlands, overseeing all the engagements in my stead. You will have 8,000 men in reserve and will be stationed at the Golden Tooth. I want 5,000 men from this force stationed at the Golden Tooth at all times to be dispatched to our allies in the Riverlands should they need reinforcements in the event of Lannisters trying to overrun them and strike us from the rear. The rest of the forces are free to be deployed for the other commanders should they need reinforcements in their task. Not that I expect such requests to be made lightly, warned Robb. Jon knew most of the intelligent commanders understood the king's subtle message. Failure would not be treated kindly, and stupidly wasting troops for their personal ambitions would be detrimental to their rise in the king's favor. It will be done, your grace. But what about Lannisport and Casterly Rock? Questioned Lord Royce seriously, earning nods from almost everyone as they all knew what was their ultimate target: to truly hurt the Lannisters. Once few of our commanders achieve their objectives, they are to rejoin with Lord Royce after leaving respectable garrisons to hold the castles you have seized. Lord Royce with that bolstered strength is to attack Lannisport and initiate a siege of Casterly Rock. Do not try to attack it until I advise otherwise, for we cannot waste men needlessly to capture such a stronghold without sufficient strength or a real plan of action, explained Robb in detail. And the noble prisoners that we take upon seizing the castles? Where are we to hold them as hostages? Asked Lord Bolton frankly. Send them to the Golden Tooth under armed escort. From there, Lord Royce is to transport them to Riverrun in similar manner. By any chance, the Lannister army breaches our lines in the Riverlands and routes Sir Bryden and Lord Edmure there, I want the Westerlords to see the faces of their families at Riverrun. Even if Tywin and his family want them to march, their bannermen would be reluctant if we threaten to execute their captured family and retainers, answered Robb. Wouldn't it be more beneficial to ransom them? Asked Black Walder with a disturbing smirk, earning a sharp glare from the king. Not until we have dealt with the Lannisters, or I command otherwise. Anyone who disobeys this command and puts our strategy and army in jeopardy will be punished severely, warned Robb icily. Black Walder flinched and looked away from the king's challenging gaze, which only earned a series of nods from the rest of the nobility swiftly. I will take the rest of the 10,000 men into the Reach. First we will destroy Old Oak, thereby denying our enemy a chance to establish a supply base should they try to counter our hold in the Westerlands from that direction. Once that is done, we will march further into the Reach to seize or destroy their farms, logistics centers and warehouses to finish the critical supplies that feed the vast forces of the Lannister-Tyrell alliance. Should I get a chance to seize Highgarden and take hostages, I shall do so, announced Robb. Your Grace, I feel you should take at least 3,000 more men into the Reach alongside you. We can spare such limited numbers and it will make us all a little less worried if our king has ample protection, advised Lord Royce. I agree, Your Grace. The Reachmen will have left at least 10,000 to 15,000 men as reserves to defend their lands even if their main army is in the field with Mace Tyrell at King's Landing. Should they receive additional reinforcements, we will need the added help to beat them or make a tactical retreat after achieving our objectives, suggested Sir Barristan respectfully. We could use the extra help, my king, agreed John, making Rob look at his brother and earned a firm nod in return. The king was silent for a moment before nodding his consent, but still advised Lord Royce to always have 5,000 men stationed at the Golden Tooth to aid the Tullys in the Riverlands at all costs, to which the Vale Lord agreed. There was a smile upon Rob's face as he then looked at some of his most trusted lords, commanders, fierce warriors and close friends. Lord John Stark, Lord Great John Umber, Lady Mage Mormont, Lady Daisy Mormont, Lord Harry Oncarstark, Sir Wendell Marndaly, Black Walder, Sir Damon Varden of the Urry. The said men and women stepped forward before their king as he looked at them all with confidence and absolute faith in his eyes. Will you ride with me? Asked Rob with a smile. To victory or death, Your Grace, swore Lord Umber fiercely, making the king smirk. Leave death for our enemies, Lord Umber. We ride to victory. The proclamation only lifted spirits even further for everyone in the command tent upon seeing their king's conviction. I expect the best of all of you, Your Grace. Next day, John Stark stood beside his brother and king upon the battlements of the Golden Tooth in the early hours of morning. Both of them were watching the movement happening across their vast army camp below as the various commanders had started readying their respective men to accomplish the objectives given by the king. Lord Umber and Lady Mage were doing the same for the king's own force that would march into the Reach. It's finally time, Rob whispered John, making the king nod. Do you remember the promise we made to each other as young boys if a moment like this ever arrived? Asked Rob nostalgically with a fleeting smile, making John smirk. That we would stand at the front of our armies and win every battle with courage and honor, answered John honestly. Aye, it's a part of it. But there was another more important part of our promise that you have forgotten, brother, reminded Rob. What am I forgetting? Questioned John, now truly curious as Rob turned towards him with unflinching determination in his eyes. To win the universe together. John's eyes widened in surprise for a long moment as he stared at his brother, best friend and king. It had been nothing but an innocent dream of young boys, but he saw it was no longer the case as he saw actual belief in Rob's eyes as the king looked at him without a flinch and offered his right hand. Despite the odds against them, he saw a vision of something truly bigger in Rob's eyes in this moment. A dream far bigger than just a thirst for justice or revenge. Already, we have lost quite a lot. It's possible we may lose more, even so we shall fight. To keep our promises and achieve justice for our family, and to make this world better than the one we inherited for our children. To grasp the strength to achieve our dreams and never again bow to summons of those we despise, explained Rob in all honesty. You have a far bigger dream now, don't you? Asked John with a knowing gaze. Aye. John nodded and understood a little from where his brother was coming from. There were a lot of things wrong within their society, nations and their way of life. If they were truly to create a positive change beyond winning wars, then a larger vision was needed, something which Rob had started thinking of. It only validated John's decision to support his brother's kingship and gave him hope to bring some reforms that he personally desired as well. To achieve all of that would demand nothing less than what was being proposed by the king, which was why John nodded and shook his brother's hand firmly with a smile upon his lips. In that moment, they both made a solemn promise to each other that would change their lives forever. Let's win the universe together. Chapter 18. Into the Storm. King's Landing. The atmosphere inside the council chamber once occupied by King Joffrey's court was quite somber, with its occupants now being the members of King Stannis Baratheon's council who had been gathered late night upon their king's command. The only familiar face from the old council was Grand Maester Pycelle, whom many found strange to have been present in the Red Keep when the Lannisters fled or had been left behind as a spy by their enemies. Many called for his head, but Stannis had reluctantly spared the old man from that fate and instead deployed him in his service, considering the Citadel had so far not answered their request for a new Grand Maester to take up the role, and would certainly not until the war was over. With many in their army wounded, they needed Pycelle's limited talents for the time being. Sir Davos Seaworth, the new hand of the king, sat uneasily in his chair looking at his old-time smuggler friend Saladhor Saaran, the current leader of what little remained of their navy after the disastrous Battle of Blackwater Bay weeks earlier. Across the table, Sir Axel Florent, the Queen's uncle, looked at Davos with scorn, having desired the position of hand for himself even if he had no skill for the role. Lord Munfrod Valerian, the Lord of Driftmark, sat on the other end. He was one of the last few lords still surviving under Stannis's cause, but had lost many of his men and all his ships at Blackwater Bay at the hands of Tyrion Lannister, leading to his current somber mood. Sir Richard Horpe, Sir Gendry Faring and Justin Massey sat in silence at the end of the table, with all three men looking quite tired after having just finished long shifts overseeing the defence of the capital from Tywin Lannister and his forces at their gates alongside Reachman. It was no secret they had lost many of their lords, commanders and soldiers when their fleet had been set ablaze by the deceased Tyrion Lannister, with many more falling while taking the capital from Lannister hands. If not for their king's stern but able leadership, they would have lost the city when Tywin arrived with the Reach and Lannister armies at his back. The king entered moments later, making everyone get up from their seats and offer respectful bows, earning a curt nod from Stannis Baratheon as he assumed his seat at the head of the table. Grand Maester, report as to why more than half of the enemy forces seem to have disappeared from the field overnight, commanded Stannis, making Pycelle give a quick nod. Of course, Your Grace. From the few prisoners we captured in today's skirmish, we have gathered some astonishing news, said Pycelle dramatically, making Stannis grind his teeth. Do tell fast, old man, said Saladhor with grunt in his foreign accent. It would appear that the Lannisters have suffered great setbacks, my lords. After defeating Lord Gregor Clegane and his forces, Jon Snow effectively neutralized the last of the Lannister forces in the Riverlands, considering Lord Tywin Lannister gathered his Reach allies to rush towards the capital to its defense from his grace, King Stannis. Seizing upon the opportunity, Jon Snow led a strike force and captured the Golden Tooth. From there he went on to crush the reserve Lannister forces being raised by Stafford Lannister in the Westerlands with minimal losses of his own. That opened the way into the Westerlands, reported Pycelle in his usual slow fashion. Stannis didn't miss the surprise upon the faces of nearly everyone, with only Sir Davos remaining calm even as the Grand Maester continued. Robb Stark managed to gain the loyalty of the Vale, whose lords declared him as king, leaving Lysa Arryn little choice but to follow suit to avoid a civil war within her own lands. With his new forces, he descended into the Riverlands and captured Harrenhal without losing a single man by making the garrison turn upon each other. But the Starks found many of their men taken prisoner in earlier battles slaughtered inside the castle, including Arya Stark, stated Pycelle hesitantly. Robb Stark may be another usurper, but his father died for King Stannis's claim. The death of Eddard Stark's youngest daughter under such mysterious circumstances is a grievous mistake for which the Northmen will have their revenge, Your Grace, said a shocked Sir Davos. And they have. Tell them, Grand Maester, said Stannis curtly, and Davos wasn't sure but he detected a fleeting satisfaction in the king's eyes. With Sansa Stark rescued by the Northmen before the city was conquered by his grace, King Stannis the Starks executed Jaime Lannister. The deed was done by Jon Snow by all accounts. Stunned silence prevailed in the room, and Stannis didn't miss the shock on the faces of his men. Tywin Lannister will never forgive this, said Lord Munfrod Valerian with concern. The Kingslayer deserved nothing less. That will teach the Lannisters some humility if they have not learned anything from his grace already, voiced Sir Richard Horpe fiercely. These Starks have balls, wolf boys seem to have more claws than the old lion, mocked Saladhor with a crooked grin. There's more, said Stannis curtly, surprising Davos further. Robb Stark has stripped House Lannister of all rights and intends to destroy them root and stem alongside any of their bannermen and Reach allies should they not abandon Tywin Lannister within a fortnight. Sir Jaime's execution was just the beginning, said Pycelle worriedly, making Stannis grind his teeth. Robb Stark is just another usurper, no matter our common enemies. Unlike his father who died for my claim, the boy crowned himself king and wants to be a conqueror. He has no right to command my subjects or make such decisions for the realm. As far as I am concerned, he is our enemy, the same as Tywin Lannister, stated Stannis bitterly. I agree, Your Grace. He has no right to be king, for you are our rightful ruler. However, he now has nearly 50,000 men under his command. The sons of Eddard Stark have proven themselves in battle time and again now. I recommend we make common cause with them to deal with our enemies first, suggested Sir Davos, earning a stern glare from his king. Never. Davos sighed and chose to drop the matter as he looked at all the hateful glares he received from everyone except Saladhor for the suggestion. Robb Stark and this Jon Snow will now move into the Westerlands and even the Reach if they are truly bold. It is why Tywin has dispatched nearly half his army to stop them. This gives us an opportunity, Your Grace, said Justin Massey eagerly. From latest reports, there are hardly 30,000 men left outside our walls under Lord Tywin and Sir Garland and Sir Loras Tyrell's command. The rest of their commanders and forces have left the battlefield, reported Pycelle. The debate continued for some time upon their next course of action until Stannis ordered them to continue defending the capital and dismissed everyone except Sir Davos, much to ire of Axel Florent, who gave the Onion Knight a glare before leaving. Last I heard, Jon Snow had taken the Black. Why is a brother of Night's Watch taking part in the realm's affair? Asked Stannis with a heavy frown. I know not, Your Grace, answered Sir Davos truthfully. Find out. Davos nodded swiftly, making Stannis remain silent for several long moments. Tywin will intensify the attacks upon the capital. He can't afford to waste more time and men in a siege. With our fleet nearly destroyed, we have no option but to hold the capital under all costs if we want to live. What is the progress on the wildfire caches? Asked Stannis quickly. Tyrion Lannister used a large portion to destroy our fleet, but we have found more within the city upon putting the pyromancers under interrogation. They have also made more upon your command, Your Grace, reported Davos honestly. I hope the dwarf is rotting in hell. His deviousness costed us a lot of good men and our fleet, said Stannis bitterly. Yes, Your Grace, replied Davos sadly, making Stannis look at him with sympathy. Your sons did their duty. I will never forget that, said Stannis respectfully, and could only admire the humble man before him who had lost 4 of his eldest sons when their fleet was almost destroyed. If only Sir Imry has listened. Lamented Davos, making Stannis nod with a tired sigh. It was a mistake to give him command. I should have trusted you, but it's done now and we can do nothing about it, admitted Stannis. Yes, Your Grace. We should have brought Lady Melisandre with us here. Your staunch insistence on leaving her behind at Dragonstone is as much to blame as is Sir Imry Florent's foolishness. With her powers, we could have turned the tide and not lost so many, commented Stannis frankly. Perhaps, Your Grace. But the people and our men had to see you winning the city instead of believing it was due to her sorcery. I can only hope her presence at Dragonstone should be enough to keep the Queen and Princess Shireen safe for the time being, answered Davos loyally. Stannis nodded before marching back to the table where he drank a glass of water before looking back at Davos. We must defeat Tywin Lannister here while the Starks deal with his armies. Start using wildfire from now on to destroy their attacks and break their morale, commanded Stannis. Yes, Your Grace. But I must again caution, this could backfire on us if the wildfire spreads within the city, warned Davos. I am aware of the risks, Sir Davos. But we need to break this siege and destroy Tywin or force him to retreat. Then we must reform our army and gather additional armies to face Robb Stark and this Jon Snow, stated Stannis curtly. For the first time, Davos saw a brief concern in the eyes of his battle-hardened king. The Starks have never lost a battle, Your Grace, said Davos carefully. They haven't so far, I shall admit that. If nothing else, Ned Stark's heir and bastard son are good at war. If only they had their father's loyalty and honor. We could have used such commanders and the men they lead. Robb Stark was smart to rescue Sansa Stark before we seized the Red Keep. If we had the girl, the Starks would have listened to your desire for a common cause. Now I am afraid, they are our enemies as much as the Lannisters. Davos didn't understand the true significance of his king's fateful words until 2 days later. They received a dire raven from Dragonstone. Stannis sat in his solar with Sir Davos as his only company. The king was gritting his teeth so harshly, and for once even Davos was stunned upon hearing the message brought by the raven. Robb Stark, all this time, we were so focused upon the enemies in front of us only to now realize the new ones at our back, said Davos worriedly. The Stark usurper has some nerve trying to lay a siege upon Dragonstone. He intends to kill or capture my queen and only heir to take me out of this war. The Vale fleet and 3,000 men surround my home as we speak, trying to breach my castle, said Stannis furiously. Your orders, my king? Asked Davos seriously. Use what little ships we have left and as many men that can be carried upon them to break the siege. If my queen and heir are lost, so does my cause, said Stannis furiously. That will weaken our strength here and leave little chance for you to retreat should the Lannisters breach the gates of the city. This action only strengthens the Lannisters, said Davos worriedly. Robb Stark has left us no choice, Davos. I will not abandon the capital and will sell my life dearly before Tywin can step inside this city. The Stark usurper will pay for this treachery in blood. Lady Melisandre insists she can turn this catastrophe around by awakening the stone dragon on Dragonstone, revealed Stannis, making Davos's eyes go wide in shock, for he knew the price of such an action and had repeatedly fought to prevent it. Edric is a boy, Your Grace. Your own blood. He's not just some common bastard, argued Davos in horror, and was heartbroken upon seeing Stannis not backing down now from what the Red Woman had wanted all along. You have kept the boy safe after we seized him upon taking Storm's End from Sir Courtney Penrose and Renly. I was inclined to accept your suggestion to spare Edric's life, but our situation is impossible now. A king must weigh the life of one boy over the fate of his kingdom. I am surrounded by usurpers all around with larger armies, my army is diminished and trapped in this city, my family and seat besieged, and you know damn well what Tywin Lannister will do to all of us should we lose this war, retorted Stannis sternly. Your Grace, please. You have your command, Sir Davos. Save the Queen and my daughter, break the siege of Dragonstone by all means. Lady Melisandre will get what she wants or all is lost. The only one to blame for Edric's fate is Robb Stark alone, said Stannis bitterly, and Davos could only helplessly stare at the letter their king had prepared to be sent to the damned Red Woman to carry out that order. Why had it come to this? Robb Stark's next campaign had started upon a good note when he had marched with an army of several thousand men from the Golden Tooth. His host having been joined by forces under Lord Bolton and Sir Harold Hardang as well, who had been tasked with capturing Sarsfield and the Crag respectively. Other lords had already left with their forces towards Deepden, Hornval and Ashmark, with Lord Yohn Royce remaining at Golden Tooth with their reserves and acting as divisional commander in the Westerlands. The very first sign of the king's decree of destroying House Lannister completely alongside any vassals who supported them came into action soon enough when their mighty host came upon the seat of Sarsfield. With many of their men away with Tywin Lannister and the Green One slaughtered under Stafford's host, the seat was practically defenseless with barely 24 oldbeards and young boys defending it. Not a single one of them were prepared to hold off thousands of fresh enemy soldiers, many veterans of previous wars. Upon witnessing King Robb Stark's presence upon the battlefield, House Sarsfield became the first of the Western bannermen to surrender willingly and avoid the destruction of their house and ancestral seat. Jon personally witnessed the official surrender provided by Lady Sarsfield in the presence of their king, who graciously accepted the act and ordered no harm to be inflicted upon her family, lands or people. Most importantly, Lord Bolton had been provided 3,000 men to take this enemy stronghold, but now with its surrender willingly, those men and its commander joined their king, bringing their host to over 16,000 men for the Reach campaign. Sir Harold left the next day with his 2,000 men to seize the Crag as the king and his army marched unopposed through the Westerlands. Along the way, Jon finally realized why these lands were considered one of the richest in the Seven Kingdoms when their king sent out many eager parties to raid nearby gold mines under the leadership of Lord Roose Bolton, who was quite pleased with the task. Suffice to say, the men came back with more gold than most had seen in their lifetime, but instead of distributing it among his forces, their king gave another order which stunned nearly everyone. Our men will be rewarded, but not with this gold, but from that we shall seize in the Reach. I need this one for another objective, said Robb decisively, as they made camp at night as their host came closer towards the borders with the Reach. Your Grace, asked Sir Barristan curiously, earning supporting nods from Lords Umber, Bolton, Redfort, Templeton and Lyn Corbray. You shall see soon, my lords. That is all I shall say for now, answered Robb calmly. Very well, my king. But I would suggest we decide the command roles of our forces before entering Reach lands, suggested Sir Simon Templeton eagerly, who had brought nearly 1,000 men to their host and was distantly related to the Starks through some earlier ancestral kin who Jon wasn't aware of. Robb nodded at the suggestion, making many of the lords perk up in anticipation. Sir Lyn Corbray shall lead our scouts. You will be our eyes and ears on the ground with the objective of searching for valuable logistic and military targets for us to attack, alongside warning us on the approach of any enemy forces, no matter how insignificant. You shall have 500 cavalry under your command, Sir, commanded Robb, earning a pleased smile from the thin but handsome knight who wielded a Valyrian sword named Lady Forlorn. I shall not fail you, my king promised Sir Lin confidently, making Rob nod before he turned towards Jon himself. Jon Stark shall lead our vanguard with Lord Greatjon Umber as second in command. You shall have 3,000 cavalry under your command and shall work closely with Sir Lin, instructed Rob. Time to make these knights of summer bleed, my king, boasted the Greatjon with a hearty chuckle, making many others grin, as the giant of a man could certainly butcher men, as had been demonstrated many times already. The fierce lord of Last Hearth gave an appreciative nod and seemed to have no qualms of serving under Jon after having fought side by side in multiple engagements of past. It will be my honor, your grace, agreed Jon with a smile, making Rob smile in return. Lord Roose Bolton, Lord Redfort and Lord Templeton shall lead our main columns of 9,000 men, while Lady Mage is in charge of our supplies and logistics with 500 men and has to ensure all the loot we capture in form of gold, food and crucial supplies from the Reach are transported back safely into the Westerlands, from where Lord Royce will keep some for his own forces before sending the majority to our armies in the Riverlands and its people, explained Rob in detail. He earned firm nods from the chosen commanders as the king turned towards Sir Barristan next and also looked at Dacey Mormont and Harry on Karstark. I shall have a royal guard of 3,500, some of our finest men acting as our reserve to be deployed in dire circumstances. Sir Barristan will lead it. My personal battle guard will be made up of Dacey Mormont, Harry on Karstark, Wendell Marndaly, Black Walder, Sir Daemon Varden, Sir Michael Redfort, Sir Jasper Redfort, Patrick Mallister, Donal Locke, Oliver and Pewin Free. Even as he reformed his personal battle guard, for a moment the king saw many familiar faces who were no longer with him. The ever-confident Theon Greyjoy and loyal Owen Norrie and Lucas Blackwood, all martyred in King's Landing rescuing Sansa. Small Jon Umber, who had not yet arrived from the Vale after delivering Sansa there and sending her back north under a strong armed escort. The brave Darin Hornwood and Torren Karstark alongside Sommer but loyal Eddard Karstark, all three having laid down their lives defending Robb from Jaime Lannister in the Whispering Woods. The sensible Robin Flint, who had died capturing the Golden Tooth under Jon's command. They will be remembered, your grace, said Dacey compassionately, as the Mormonts saw exactly what their king was feeling in this very moment, earning somber nods from Harry on Karstark and few other familiar members of Robb's personal battle guard. You avenged my brothers Eddard and Torren by taking the Kingslayer's head. Nothing will bring them back but knowing Ed and Tor as well as my father, they will be satisfied with this vengeance. They protected you with their lives and I shall do the same till my last breath, your grace, swore Harry on fiercely. The Lannisters and their allies butchered my brother Sir Willis at Harrenhal. Say the word and we will make them pay in blood, your grace, promised Sir Wendell Marndaly angrily, having recently received the news of the grave manner of his elder brother's death at enemy hands alongside Princess Arya Stark and many others in that monstrous castle. Black Walder, Oliver and Pewin Free nodded as well after having lost 3 of their kin in the same tragedy. I have lost many good friends and companion in arms already. While you try to keep me alive, do the same for yourself. That is an order, said Robb honestly, as he looked at his newly formed personal battle guard. Sir Barristan saw the young men and women smile upon hearing their king's heartfelt order. He was yet to choose new members for the king's guard under his command. These young warriors would serve well as their king's protectors for the time being, few of whom Barristan had already fought alongside in battles of past and deemed worthy enough for the task. The next few days passed with hard marches through Lannister lands as their army traversed through the infamous battlefield of Oxcross, which still bore scars from its previous battle. Their men couldn't help but cheer upon seeing the defeated enemy standards lying upon the ground. The Greatjon, Lady Mage and even Black Walder boasted of the glorious battle they had won here under Jon's command. Only the young and newly legitimized Stark was Sommer. It was pure butchery, commented Jon with little satisfaction when Robb looked at him. Better them than our own men, Jon replied Robb frankly, which made Jon give just a curt nod. Another day later, they approached the road leading towards Lannisport and Casterly Rock. Many were tempted to assault it with such a large army, but Robb was steadfast in his resolve to leave the task to Lord Yohn Royce and the other commanders in the Westerlands once they had achieved their current objectives. The decision caused some resentment and mumbling, with even Jon looking disappointed upon not being able to act on the temptation of hurting the Lannisters where it mattered most. It was why Robb arrived by his side and looked at him promisingly. One day, my brother. We need to destroy Tywin's armies first before we hope to seize his castle and hold it forever, reminded Robb patiently. I know. They took our sister and for that we will take everything from them, swore Jon angrily. "Have you managed to speak to her?" asked Rob in a whisper, and was disappointed when John sadly shook his head. "I have tried, but Nymeria is distant, always out hunting with her pack of wolves. She doesn't like staying with the army much, leaving me little chance to make contact with Arya in any way," confessed John. "We'll need to figure this out soon," pointed Rob, making John nod. They continued marching further and soon reached the ruins of Tarbeck Hall a day later. The ruined castle of House Tarbeck serving as a stark reminder of what Tywin Lannister did to his enemies. Some of the lords and soldiers were a little shaken upon seeing the state of the castle and the Lannister lion flying proudly on top of it as a symbol of conquest. That was until Lord Gratian Umber struck it down and went ahead to piss upon the Lannister flag with a boisterous roar. And now the northern rain weeps over his halls. John watched the spectacle unleashed by the mad giant of House Umber in stunned silence, with many including few of the women following their army looking at the Umber Lord's sizable tool with great interest. Here they all stood in the ruins of a lord who had dared to oppose the Lannisters like them today and was completely crushed. Their house and name destroyed, the dark legacy should have made them all think about their actions at least once. And there was the great Jon pissing proudly upon Tywin Lannister's greatest and most horrifying achievement. It was Rob's laughter that broke the stunned silence, making thousands of their men join their king's amusement, and even a few madder ones joining Lord Umber in pissing upon the Lannister flag. "Your Grace, this is unseemly of a commander in your ranks," protested Sir Barristan with a frown. "Leave it be, Sir Barristan. The great Jon wouldn't be himself if not allowed to do what he does best, fearless against all odds. In this instance, his not-so-proper action have bolstered the men's resolve. Let him have his moment now. One day I might just piss inside Tywin's chamber," replied Rob with a faint smirk. "Your Grace, that is, you're joking," said Barristan in shock, making Rob laugh once more as John did the same upon seeing the stunned look upon the veteran Kingsguard's face. Yet even Barristan couldn't help but agree with the king's reasoning when their army resumed their march again, only this time with the northern rain weeping over the Lion's Hall's crude song upon their lips. It became their marching theme to his continued bewilderment and made the men march with more speed and determination, to everyone's shock, with the great Jon leading the charge quite happily. Even thousands from the Vale started to admire the mad giant of Umber for his fearlessness. That reputation came in hand when Sir Lyn Corbray and his scouts got into their first engagement as their army approached the lands near Cricket Hall. John and Lord Umber led out a sortie of the vanguard cavalry to the aid of their scouts fearlessly and made quick work in routing the outriders of House Cricket Hall back to their castle. A few hours later, King Robb Stark arrived with the rest of the army to find an encampment had already been set up by his brother and Lord Umber alongside Sir Lyn Corbray and his scouts outside the seat of House Cricket Hall. It was the first stronghold, which looked well defended, with Cricket Hall soldiers manning the ramparts and walls of the castle. The brindled boar flag flew proudly upon the castle alongside the Lannister lion. "None so fierce," said Sir Barristan with grudging respect towards the enemy house's words. "Let me guess, they don't wish to surrender?" asked Robb with a knowing gaze. "No, Your Grace. Lord Roland Cricket Hall and his second son Sir Lyle are with Tywin Lannister. The castle is currently manned by some 300 fighters under the command of Sir Tybalt Cricket Hall the heir and Sir Burton Cricket Hall. They have refused all calls to surrender or parley. They wish to fight to defend their castle till the last man," reported John seriously. "Offer him fair terms to surrender once more. Remind him we have 16,000 men outside his gates. Should he ignore this offer, we will storm his castle and their fate then won't be so generous," ordered Robb without hesitation. John bowed and went out to execute the command, making Robb turn towards his commanders next. "We can't leave an enemy at our rear before we march into the Reach. They'll harass us and threaten our communication lines with Lord Royce. I pray they see sense of their situation, but if they don't, then let us make them feel the fury of winter," commanded Robb icily. "Lord Bolton, ready the siege engines and ladders," provided Sir Bryden Tully. "Upon my command, be ready to unleash hell. Lord Templeton, you have command of the archer unit. I want their defenders under heavy fire. You have permission to use flaming arrows to set whatever is there inside the castle on fire." "Will that be enough, Your Grace?" "A seat like this would require more to fall," cautioned Lord Bolton. "You're right, my lord. And it shall have it," answered Robb with steel in his determined voice. Roose looked at the king for a long moment and couldn't help but feel what the boy must be planning. For all his useless honorable trait that he inherited from Eddard Stark, the young Stark had a mind for war. having served him so far, had already proven the boy was far more braver, bolder and cunning than his deceased lord father. Traits that were sorely required for the impossible list of tasks ahead of them. If the boy faltered, then it would be the end of all who followed him, something which Roose couldn't allow. As they had predicted, the Crickehall heir refused to surrender his limited garrison and castle despite the generous terms provided by King Robb Stark. It was why Jon Stark found himself in his brother's command tent with only Sir Barristan in company, the rest of the lords having already begun the siege 2 hours earlier. The enemy had their hands full with the great Jon and his parties hammering at their walls and gate. "The enemy is fighting valiantly, I must say," said Robb with grudging respect. "The first of Tywin's bannermen to actually give us a real challenge," agreed Jon with a nod. "How do we approach this, Your Grace?" "We can't waste more time and must enter the Reach lands before they rally their reserve forces. Otherwise, we will be in trouble," cautioned Sir Barristan. "I agree. Which is why I have sent Sir Lyn Corbray to scout ahead and report if the Reach are doing exactly the same. If we get positive reports of their reserves assembling at Highgarden, then I will depart with a large contingent to smash them quickly," answered Robb truthfully. "Jon, you have taken the Golden Tooth. What shall be your recommendation in taking this stronghold?" asked Robb thereafter with utmost seriousness. "A frontal assault will win us victory eventually, but with the cost of time and many lives. I suggest a twin-pronged strike. Have the enemy believe we will storm through their gates while a large portion of our troops create boats quickly. At midnight, under the cover of darkness, I can lead a strike force to breach their harbor." "They don't have enough men for an assault on 2 fronts," suggested Jon. "Risky, but this is war." "How many men do you need?" questioned Robb. "Nearly 200 or so. They'll need to be lightly armored for transportation on boats and ladders for scaling the walls of the castle from the harbor. Casualties will be high, with the possibility of a catastrophe should we fail or get surrounded in the castle." "I have seen it before," warned Jon, his thoughts going towards all the Northmen and Robin Flint who had given their lives at the Golden Tooth in such a maneuver. "Then you will need more men for better odds. The strike force will need motivation to hold their ground and eventually open the front gate for the rest of our forces to storm through, or create enough chaos for our main army to scale the walls and breach the front gate. The only way that will happen if I am there," said Robb decisively. "Robb." "Your Grace." Robb didn't fail to miss the shock and disbelief upon the faces of his brother and Kingsguard leader. "The enemy won't fall for this distraction unless there is a real important target for them to divert their forces from the main gate. It's a great risk, but everything I have done ever since leaving Winterfell is a gamble." "It has to be me," explained Robb patiently. "You're our king," protested Jon, but knew his brother's mind was made up as his next words proved that. "A king who fights his own battles, isn't that a sight to see?" 2 days later. "This is risky," cursed Daisy Mormont, making Jon give a tired sigh. "We have our king's orders," my lady reminded Sir Wendell dutifully, as various members from their king's royal guard alongside 500 men assembled under the command of Sir Barristan Selmy. On the shore near the forests, were the multiple boats they had seized from nearby fishermen and made many more after forcefully putting those civilians to work along with their soldiers, all the while their main army continued battering Crickehall's sturdy walls. Their only solace was the fact that Robb had more than doubled the amount of men that Jon had originally asked for this maneuver. Some of the most dangerous and toughest fighters of their army, including many of the Royal Guard, had been called into service. It was what had caused excitement and trepidation at the same time across the Chosen, but the fact that their king would be leading the assault himself made them even more fanatical in their determination to succeed. Jon had his apprehensions aplenty, but he would follow his brother loyally and protect him with his life if needed without hesitation. It was why he looked at members of the Royal Guard with nothing but ironclad determination. "Our king has never lost a battle before. We will not fail him," ordered Jon fiercely. "The Royal Guard is made up of the best fighters in our army. It is time you men and women live up to those expectations and show the army how to do the impossible," encouraged Sir Barristan. That seemed to do the trick as Daisy Mormont, Sir Wendell, Sir Daemon Varden, Sir Pewinfrey, Black Walder, Sirs Michael and Jasper Redfort, Donal Locke and Black Walder steeled their resolve and stood more straight. Even young Oliver Free, who was Robb's squire, gathered his courage and bowed to Sir Barristan. Seeing the determination of Robb's personal battle guard inspired the rest of the men of the Royal Guard, who assembled with renewed vigor as their king arrived to join their ranks. Robb looked at the assembled force for a long moment, which only made the fighters stand at more attention. "It's an honor to fight beside each of you. I'll live up to your courage and bravery while leaving the fate of this battle and my life in your capable hands," said Robb calmly and with great respect. It was the first time Sir Barristan found himself about to go in battle with his new king. The young Stark didn't give a great speech like many expected, but his simple words were more than enough to convey the trust their monarch was placing in each warrior's hands. Most were humbled by the declaration and bowed respectfully, making Robb nod as he turned towards the boats and started marching, with Jon and Sir Barristan being the first to follow after him. There were no great cheers or enthusiasm as the rest of Robb's personal battle guard and men of the royal guard followed after them. Just an ice-cold determination to return the honor their king had shown them tonight. Under a cloudy night, the boats rowed towards the seat of House Crickehall in silence. In the distance, they could see a massive attack had already been started by Lords Bolton and Umber to create a worthwhile distraction, with the 3 direwolves of House Stark remaining in open vicinity, making the enemy believe the Stark brothers would be nearby. The beasts had not been pleased upon seeing their masters leaving, but the king and Jon had somehow managed to placate them, with only Nymeria seeming more agitated but eventually complying along with her litter mates. King Robb Stark was at the head of one of the boats alongside Jon, Sir Barristan and Sir Daemon Varden, along with a few more men. The rest of their force were all around them in several boats and were surging forward